Chapter 351. Last but not least, the difference between a good and an expert swordsman lies in the footwork. Tepper ignored Litha's words and performed a feint to the face before sighed, stepping to stab at his exposed shoulder. Unfortunately for the sergeant, footwork was something Lith had learned back on Earth, and it was the first thing he had practiced as soon as his body allowed him to. Tepper's blade hit only air. Lith had sidestepped too, and his blade was barely an inch away from the opponent's leg. The sergeant inwardly cursed at himself for performing such an ample movement to impress the unit. Lith and Tepper were too close. At such distance, even a small opening was the difference between victory and defeat. In the next 5 months, you'll either become good swordsmen or you'll start searching for a new job. Tepper's voice was perfectly relaxed, not revealing the surprise nor the anger he was feeling. As for you, Maggot, get down and give me 40. During the following months, the training involved getting accustomed to use several magical tools and to use chore magic for tactical purposes. Lith already knew most of the tools thanks to his forge mastering lessons or Solas's alchemy. They were the magical equivalent of sniper rifles, grenades of all kinds, and climbing suits. There were no such things as boots of flight or levitation. Long-lasting spells required to be controlled by their caster's will. But magical items had no will of their own. They could only turn on and off the spells they were imbued with. Much to Litha's comrades' dismay, chore magic became more and more relevant over time. Earth magic was crucial to cross quagmires or walk through muddy fields without leaving traces. Water magic allowed to more easily wade rivers, or in Litha's case to walk on water, and could be used as an invisible umbrella offering protection against rain, snow, or hail. Soon Litha's skills in both hand-to-hand combat and swordsmanship were outmatched by his instructors. He wasn't surprised nor disappointed by finding himself lacking. He had joined the army to learn how to fight, and it was finally starting to teach him something. The worst part for him was the team exercises. They were meant to build trust and teamwork between the members of the same unit, but they only resulted in Lith drifting more and more apart from the others. He didn't trust them, and they didn't trust him. Lith was like the moon to them, cold and distant, something they could look at, but never reach. He had no weakness the unit could help him overcome. When units competed against each other, and he received the role of scout, Lith would single-handedly wipe out the enemy team. If he was assigned the role of rear guard, instead, even if the unit made grave mistakes, he would be the sole survivor. The drill sergeants soon considered him a scourge rather than a monster. He was the living proof that everything they taught to the other cadets was a lie. Teamwork, trust, and hard work were useless against an overwhelmingly strong opponent. Life vision allowed him to spot his opponents, no matter how good they were at hiding. Magic wands and chore magic were more than enough to snipe enemies from a distance before they even understood what was happening to them. He has no care for the unit, nor for the lives of his teammates. Sergeant Tepper explained to Barian, the boot camp commander, "I think he's a liability, a dangerous individual that has nothing to offer to the kingdom. I swear it on my stripes, sir. To watch into his eyes is like staring into the abyss. There's nothing inside. My opinion is that Lith 1416 should be deemed unfit for service." Barian sighed. He liked people like Tepper, honest, hard-working men that put their country above everything else. Yet they failed to see the bigger picture. Does he get the job done? Unlike the sergeant, the commander had access to Litha's personal file. He liked it. A lot. "Sir, it's not a matter of success or failure." "Really?" Barian cut him short. He pinched his nose, trying to stop the migraine he experienced every time someone spouted bullshit too big for him to bear with a smile on his face. "So, if tomorrow the Royals are in danger, it's not a matter of success or failure. If we find Balkier's hideout, it's not a matter of success or failure." "Are you insane, Sergeant? I asked you a question. Does he get the job done or not?" The commander didn't stand up dramatically. He didn't even raise his voice. He simply stared at Tepper like at a dumb kid after one question too many. "Yes, he does," the sergeant replied, swallowing his pride. "Then this conversation is over." As long as he doesn't show violent tendencies or a defiant attitude toward the kingdom, I don't see any reason to dismiss him. I'm eager to see how he performs during the field test. Ligane, the father of all dragons and guardian of the Gorgon Empire's area, had his fair share of troubles too. Ever since they had found and destroyed the Master's lab located under the Blood Desert, the three great countries had been spared from the abomination threat. Ligane had never underestimated the Master, not even during that 4 years-long absence. We have no way to know if they were licking their wounds or simply had moved from one place to another. The only thing I can do is to keep my eyes open and prepare for the worst. Ligane thought, thanks to my help, Tyrus is almost done rebuilding the 2 missing power cores. Once they are completed, the Griffin Kingdom will be once again properly protected, and she will fulfill her end of the bargain. With her assistance, my research could bear countless fruits. As for Salark, I was skeptical of her decision at first, but I must admit that keeping Balkier alive was the right thing to do. His expertise in handling abominations makes him a perfect assistant in my work. Now my only question is, why has the Master returned right now? It's because they have finally completed a new lab, or because they fear us no longer. Only time will tell. I never expected you to be so devious. Malaya, the magic empress of the Gorgon Empire and Ligane's only disciple, was overjoyed. You didn't bring me to the White Griffin to show me the slave items, not the abomination hybrid. You wanted me to see an academy through your eyes. One thing does not exclude the other, kid. Ligane grinned. Those who don't learn from past mistakes are doomed to repeat them. I brought you there for several reasons, but you were right. The academy was the most important of them. Now you know how the kingdom achieved such long-lasting peace. How long will it take to complete our first academy? Ever since that day, Milea had used even her personal funds to start the research project. She couldn't believe that she, just like all her predecessors, had been so blind to never notice the difference between a school of magic and an academy. Chapter 352. Until Nalir's attack, Milea had always thought that the 6 big academies were just ostentatious schools of magic. The Gorgon Empire's schools produced the same amount of research, if not more, and they were also protected by several arrays. Sure, they couldn't host so many students at once, nor they could grant its staff rings or ballots like the academies, but Milea had never found them reason enough to investigate them further. At least until she had seen with her own eyes the true meaning behind a power core. Without someone who knows what they are doing, a century, maybe 2, if you are unlucky. Ligane replied. That long. Milea fell on her throne with a thud. That wasn't the answer she was hoping for. It's not like you're building a simple castle. You must first find a spell capable of imbuing every single stone, one at a time. Then all of them must be compatible with the power core and work in synergy. What did you expect? You guys don't even know how to build a power core. The Guardian scoffed at her impatience. You should be happy that thanks to your longevity, you'll be able to see it completed, even if it takes 3 centuries. Your grandkids will surely be grateful for all your hard work. Can't you help us? Even a little bit. Milea scratched one of the scales on Ligane's humongous neck, causing his tail to waggle uncontrollably. First, I'm not a dog, he replied, even though his body begged to differ. Second, no. I care about you, not your people. They can all die for what I care about. Also, this project will help you to find talented people, or at least trustworthy ones. In the long run, you'll be able to discern those who truly understand the relevance of long-term planning and those who are only sucking up to. Ligane was interrupted by his own communication amulet buzzing into his consciousness. It can't be another summon from the council. 2 calls in 4 years would be an all-time record. There could be Salark or Tyrus. They are close enough to establish a mind link whenever they... What the heck? Milea knew about the council as well as about the odd relationship the guardians of the Garland continent shared. She often wondered if they had an offspring together, and if yes, what they would look like. What's the matter, Ligane? Fenegar is calling me. It never happened before. We hate each other guts. Seeing Milea's confused expression, he calmly explained to her their shared past while ignoring the ringing amulet. He is one of the guardians of the Giera continent. His area of influence is right in from a mine. Only one ocean separates us. He snarled. Only one ocean? Milea chuckled. He is still too close for comfort. I don't know if it's because he started as a lizard too, or because his base elements are polar opposite to mine, water, and earth. Bottom line, he is a leviathan, a wingless ocean dragon, and we'd rather fight to the death than be together in the same room for more than 1 minute. Ligain finally tapped the white mana crystal on the amulet, letting a real-life hologram of Fenegar's head appear in the throne room. The resemblance between the two dragons made Milea yelp in surprise. The only differences she was able to notice were that while Ligain's scales were pitch black and his eyes yellow, Fenegar's were respectively pristine white and blue. He even had horns on his head, which resembled a crown, just like Ligain. But Fenegar's had a different shape and size, with two massive curved horns coming out from his temples, giving the Leviathan a demonic looking. Unlike the dragon, whose gaze was always calm, if not loving to her, the Fenegar's eyes were filled with fury and malice. Even if it was just a hologram, Milea could almost feel the salty breeze of the ocean blowing on her face, right before the incoming tide swallowed her. "What do you want, Fenegar?" Ligain's voice snapped her out of her reverie. "I hope for this day to never come, Ligain." The Leviathan hissed, keeping his eyes on his opponent. "Have you been attacked by abominations too?" "I wish." Fenegar sighed. "I have bad news and worse news. The bad news is that the human race on the Giera continent is almost extinct." "What?" Milea and Ligain shouted as one. "Don't worry. It didn't happen because of abominations, fallen races, or evolved monsters. Humans did it to themselves. One of the most powerful countries of Giera, the Tauren Kingdom, developed a biological weapon. A plague, to be precise. Their plan was to unleash it on their enemies and kill whoever didn't submit to their rule. The idea was good, but the execution poor. Once the other countries realized what was happening, they used their dead to poison the enemy's wells and lands. The plague spread through the Tauren Kingdom as well, while it was surrounded from every side until it was too late. The infection was faster than the healers could cure it or flames destroy it. You can imagine the rest. Now only talented healers, awakened ones, and their families remain. "And you stood there and did nothing?" Milea asked. "What was I supposed to do, child? Take over the kingdom? Kill everyone who knew about the plague?" Fenegar chuckled. "I serve Mogr. I serve only the balance. I don't care about who lives or not. Even if I intervened, they would have called me a tyrant and started over once I left. You can't stop an idea with violence. Only try to prove it wrong, and that's what I did together with the other guardians. We warned them, but they didn't listen. We even caused a small outbreak before they implemented their plan, hoping they would realize the immense risks it carried. They buried their dead and moved on as nothing had happened. For the greater good, they said. You have yet to answer me." Ligain snorted. He didn't care for the Gorgon Empire, let alone for the people of another continent. "Your pet interrupted me." Fenegar roared in outrage. "I was just politely answering. I called to inform you that the royal family of the Tauren Kingdom is currently sailing towards your turf, together with their magicians, a small army, and the plague to which they are all immunized. Why the heck did you let them go?" Milea's eyes brimmed with rage and mana at the thought of the danger her people were about to face. "I like your sass, little human pet." Fenegar chuckled. "I did it for your master. He is a collector of endangered species and forgotten knowledge. I thought no one better than him could decide if there's something worth salvaging. First, Milea is not my pet. She is my apprentice." Ligain's voice was calm as Milea was enraged. "Then excuse my rude words, Milea. I'll remember your name." Fenegar apologetically tilted his head, shocking Milea. She had never heard a guardian apologize before. "Second, thanks for the information. I know you didn't have to inform me. How many are they? Where I can find them?" Chapter 353. Around 200 ships. They're crossing our borders right now, near Dead Island. You can't miss them. Fenegar's image disappeared, leaving the two alone again. "What are we waiting for? Let's go." Milea kicked one of Ligain's scales, prompting him to get up. "What are you planning to do?" Kill them all, what else? If they get close enough to our coasts, they could warp steps into the Gorgon Empire. I can't allow the maniacs who created such a plague into my lands, not knowing they're insane enough to carry it with them instead of destroying it. I'd say their intent is clear. They don't seek asylum. They want new lands to start over. Well, not on my watch. Milea dispatched several instructions, setting her fleet to sail with the order of sinking every ship coming from the Giera continent, no matter the cost. What about the plague? Ligain asked. I had enough with the one from the Griffin Kingdom. It has to be destroyed. I'm not going to spare anyone willing to spread such madness. Then you'll have my help. Less than an hour later, the Tauran Kingdom was extinct for good. Litha's boot camp. After countless hours of training and combat simulations against other units, it was time for the recruits to perform their first field test. Sergeant Tepper appeared confident and relaxed as usual, but him not insulting them even once spoke volumes about how serious the situation was. Even though you are cadets, you are still part of the army. Our Griffin Kingdom has been blessed by centuries of peace, so aside from the troops stationed at the borders, the Army's main job is to guarantee the safety of our citizens. Sometimes a local lord can need our help against rioting citizens or get rid of organized crime. More frequently, we are called to exterminate monsters. They are usually stronger than humans, spawn fast, and destroy everything on their path. Every time a mercenary group is called to clean our mess is a dishonor for the crown and the army alike. The reason why the Mercenary Guild exists is that we can't be everywhere at a moment's notice. We do not have enough soldiers to cover the whole kingdom. Too many people prefer to make a quick buck at the expense of the weak rather than dedicate their lives to the service of others. If you're one of those people, the army is the wrong place to be. Tepper looked straight at Lith, who remained unfazed as usual. When we're called for help, we must be fast, ruthless, efficient. Monsters are able to proliferate only in the absence of magical beasts. That's why killing one without reason is a crime. Magical beasts are smart creatures, able to comprehend and speak the human language. So if you meet on, he asks for its assistance rather than attack it. Monsters rarely act alone. That's why we operate in units. Monsters are efficient, learn from their mistakes, and their system is merit-based. You'll never met a lazy AS spoiled monster because they die first. To beat them, we need to be better than them. We may be weaker, but our training and equipment give us an edge they'll never have. Most monsters are unable to use magic, and even the few that do are usually limited to spells from Tier 1 to 3. That's not reason enough to underestimate them. Monsters reach adulthood in a matter of weeks, while it took you 16 years to become cadets. Today we'll discover if you have what it takes to become an active soldier, a paper pusher, or if you'll be sent back home with a gift wrap. Tepper gave each one of them an enchanted uniform together with a dimensional ring, several kinds of magic wands and potions. After they changed and stored everything into their rings, the briefing continued. Today you have to face the most human-like among the monsters. We are about to attack a recently established tribe of orcs. While some of his comrades gasped in surprise, Lith accessed Solaspedia. According to lore, orcs were a corrupted race that descended from elves, but since no one had ever met an elf, Lith skipped the lore and went straight to the important part. Orcs were humanoid creatures with an average height of 1.8 meters, 5 feet 11 inches. They were gifted from birth with a physique that dangerously reminded Lith of his own after experiencing several breakthroughs. They were stronger, faster, and sturdier than humans. Their skin was naturally resistant to most elements, and they would hardly get sick. Rarely an orc would display a talent for magic, but when it happened, the creature would display incredible abilities. Great, Lith thought. So far, this is the most dangerous race of monsters I have ever met. Based on what's written in the bestiary, they seem naturally close to awakened ones. I'd better keep my head empty and my eyes open against them. Unlike humans, they were all bald, even the females. Their skin was brown as tree bark and almost as hard. Orcs also had enhanced senses that made it difficult taking them by surprise and were able to display short bursts of explosive strength or speed. Before explaining to you the nature of our opponents, I need to ask you a few questions. Be honest, because your survival depends on it. How many of you have fought for their lives in the past? For out of 10 hands were raised. How many of you have already met a monster? Only 1 hand remained. How many of you have ever killed something that wasn't game? Same as before. Really? What exactly? Litha's hand once again frustrated Tepper's speech. Everything the sergeant did, from the insults to the groundless punishments, was to give them a common enemy. Someone to hate, to make them all feel equal during their hardships and form bonds of camaraderie that would help them survive actual combat. By knowing each other, they were supposed to be able to always have each other's back, increasing their odds of survival. Even that series of questions were meant to make them realize how little they knew about the world around them. That was the point of the whole field test against humanoid monsters. They needed to feel the fear and learn how to conquer it, to realize if they were capable of taking a life. It was a critical moment in a cadet's training. Yet Litha's flexing made it look like a joke. Magical beasts, humans, goblins, ogres, abominations, evolved monsters, and undead. He replied, "What?" The unit and the sergeant said in unison. "My body count is 137 if anyone's interested," Lith said with a shrug. Mentioning evolved monsters was a tell big enough to allow Tepper to solve the riddle that had pestered him in the last months. A few years ago, there had been a rumor going around of a student of the White Griffin slaying a wyvern with a powerful sword. That very same student had even received a family name from the king himself, who had let known far and wide about how he hoped the student would have a brilliant future in the army. Thank the gods, I spoke with Commander Berrien before flunking him. Sergeant Tepper was inwardly panicking. Otherwise, it would have cost me my career, if not my life. Chapter 354. Sergeant Tepper hid his surprise behind his usual strict expression while the rest of the unit sneered at Litha's words. They were all of commoner origin and with no access to information regarding what happened in the rest of the kingdom. They had never heard about Balkier or about Nalier's assault on the White Griffin. Hence they took Litha's claim as an attempt to impress their commanding officer. "You in what army?" Vipley's snarky remark made the whole unit laugh. Tepper inwardly sighed at their ignorance, but at the same time found no reason to correct them. Lith didn't seem to mind their mistrust, while the atmosphere had become more relaxed. Their mutual spite has only one downside. Until they find a common ground, I have to think as I'm commanding 2 different units at once. Lith can't coordinate with the rest of the cadets because he is the one they hate, the common enemy that binds them together. Tepper thought. One last question. Who among you thinks to be able to lead the unit? For once, Litha's hand remained down. Only Vipley and Nilo raised their arms. Very good. Nilo, you'll be my second in command. You are promoted to the rank of corporal until the end of the mission. Vipley was disappointed, whereas Nilo was brimming with joy, but neither of them let it show on their faces. They simply replied with a, "Sir, yes, sir." "Why do you think I chose you, Cadet Nilo?" Tepper asked. "Because Vipley is our second best scout. His skill set is more suited for the front lines, while I have no particular strong suit aside from my tactical knowledge." Tepper nodded at her reply. Good girl. Smart enough to recognize her limits as well as those of her comrades. She didn't even attempt to berate Lith, acknowledging him as the best scout instead. He thought. The sergeant then assigned to each member of the unit their role. To no one's surprise, Lith received once again the role of the rear guard. Aside from Nilo, everyone else sniggered. They thought he was being punished for his lie since the rear guard was considered the most boring and useless job. There's nothing to laugh about. She scolded them. The rear guard is one of the most vital roles. His duty is to cover our backs and make sure that if something goes wrong, we have a clear retreat path. Lyle was about to reply, but Tepper's cold glare stopped him in his tracks. Only then he realized she was now his commanding officer too. They were no longer peers, and his words could have been taken as insubordination. Tepper briefed them about the orc's strong and weak points before taking out from his dimensional amulet a whole rack full of weapons of every kind. Take whatever you think you might need. Lith took for himself a few throwing daggers, a short sword, and a bastard sword. After everyone completed their equipment, the sergeant led them out of the boot camp and inside the woods. They marched for a few hours before he made them stop for a brief rest. We are very close now. Our scouts inspected the place a couple of days ago and reported that the tribe should consist of no more than 20 orcs, children included. Our duty is to kill them all, no matter the age or gender. Am I clear? After everyone nodded, Tepper continued. Male and female orcs are equally strong. Orc elders are not like your usual grandpa. They're seasoned warriors, and what they lack in strength they made up in skill. Any faulty member of the tribe becomes their dinner, so you'll only fight against dangerous enemies. If you underestimate the orcs, you'll die. This is your mission, so you're on your own. I'm only here to supervise, not to help. If you screw up, I'll do my best to save you. If you royally screw up, there's only so much I can do. Keep that in mind. The sergeant handed Nilo a map of the region, giving her the opportunity to use all the information at hand to come up with a battle plan. Sir, I request permission to leave the HQ to perform my duty. Lith stood in front of Nilo, speaking with his usual flat voice. We have yet to move, so there is no need for a rearguard. Permischende. The words died in her mouth as soon as Nilo realized what was happening. It wasn't the first time she was picked as the team leader, and Lith had never wasted her time before. How many of them? She corrected herself. 3 from behind, 3 from the front. His words made everyone flinch, even the sergeant. They're coming from our 10, 12, 2, 4, 6, and 8. We'll be surrounded in less than a minute. He's just bullshitting us. There's no one around. Vipley felt outraged. He had stood guard from the top of a tree the whole time, while Lith had strolled around the area. There was no way someone could sneak past him that easily. Permission granted. Nilo ignored him. Do you need backup? Lith shook his head before darting away. Despite he was running, his boots produced no noise. He was using a mix of air and earth magic to make his steps light like a falling petal. Does he get the job done? The words of Commander Barian echoed in Tepper's mind while he was climbing the nearest tree to assess the situation. He had not assigned the role of scout to Lith only to avoid him soloing the mission. Lith is right. They are coming from every direction. Tepper said, leaving Vipley dumbstruck. What are your orders, Corporal? The situation wasn't that bad. Worst-case scenario, Tepper could easily handle 3 trolls. His intervention would mark the team failing the field test, but cadets had much more to learn from a defeat rather than from victory, especially from an undeserved one. Everyone, battle formation 11. The unit followed Nilo's order, assuming a circular formation and holding their lightning wands ready to fire. She led them to the nearest clearing, leaving the enemies no place to hide. Such a spot would also bring out the maximum potential of the wand's long-range attacks. Their faces were priceless. Lith grinned. Being the last in line also means I can use life vision with no risk of being discovered. I always avoid a fair fight when possible. Solus, is there something I should know? No arrays nor any surveillance spell. She replied, you can go all out if you want. There are no witnesses since the rest of the unit remained behind. Lith nodded, taking the army's bastard sword out of the dimensional ring. He circled around the orc to kill it with a surprise attack. I wish I could take one alive and experiment on them. If I'm right, and these creatures are naturally close to the awakened state, there is no telling how much I could learn from them. Lith inwardly sighed. As always, he had so many things to do and so little time. Chapter 355. Lith was now moving a few centimeters above the ground, using air magic to float and prevent the enemy from detecting his presence. He even used darkness magic to cancel his own smell. Yet, as soon as he obtained a clean line of sight, Lith noticed the orc staring back at him with eyes filled with mana. It was a male, slightly shorter than Lith. He was armed with a heavy stone club and was only wearing pants made of orc skin. In the orc society, the weak were nothing but livestock. What the heck? I always moved while keeping myself hidden behind trees or vegetation. There's no way he could know my position, unless... Lith activated life vision again, noticing that the enemy's mana was moving from his eyes to his free left hand. The orc waved his hand, releasing a wind blade towards Lith's neck. At such a short range, it was fast and powerful enough to decapitate an opponent unaware of the existence of true magic. Lith had no problem going under the blade while using spirit magic to break the orc's neck. Unfortunately, it had no effect. My usual rotten luck. Lith inwardly cursed. First, the F-cur employed some kind of life vision. Then he used a tier 2 true spell. And now this? Why do I always find champions instead of regular grunts? Core color. He asked Solus. Deep yellow, but definitely awakened. Solus replied. This orc must be one of those the bestiary refers to as displaying incredible abilities. The orc didn't like Lith being taller than him. In his society, size meant strength, and strength meant survival. Seeing a feeble human surpassing him meant hate at first sight. When Lith easily dodged the airblade, hate turned into rage. The orc swung his club in a wide arc that started above his head and ended at Lith's feet, causing a thundering noise. Lith sidestepped, avoiding the telegraph attack and stabbing the opponent's heart at the same time. The orc grunted, activating earth fusion to stop the sword in its tracks. He contracted his strong muscles, which together with his thick ribcage formed a rock-hard defense. Lith reacted by infusing himself with fire magic, piercing both like paper. The boost granted by the yellow core was nothing compared to the one from Lith's bright cyan one. The creature died with a shocked expression on his face while releasing a foul smell. The sword had not only robbed the orc of his life, but also of the control over his bowels. What the heck does this mean? Lith could see the creature's life force fading away, yet the mana flow was increasing. He kneeled near the corpse, using invigoration to get a grasp of the phenomenon. Amazing! Solus exclaimed. Somehow the life force is being converted into mana instead of going to waste. The question is, to what end? I don't know and I don't care. Lith decapitated the creature, just to be safe, before storing it inside the dimensional ring. As soon as the head was removed, all the accumulated mana departed from the body in the form of a yellow dart. It flew above the trees, disappearing at the speed of light. This doesn't make sense. Solus was shocked. Usually when someone dies, their core leaks mana until it turns gray and disappears. This time, instead, it grew in power before releasing a large amount of mana and turning red at once. Only then the core started leaking mana. What does this mean? Lith asked. I don't know. Otherwise I would have said that it makes sense. Solus's thoughts oozed sarcasm. One down, 2 more to go. I hope they let me keep the body. Maybe we could learn something from it. Lith thought while activating life vision just in time to notice the other 2 orcs converging on him. Lith took out a couple of wands, floating above the ground again to hide his movements. Yet once more the enemies seemed to see through the vegetation, following him with ease. Orcs do not use magic, my pale ass. Lith inwardly cursed. Either I'm the unluckiest man alive, or there's something terribly wrong here. Solus, what color are their cores? Deep yellow and orange. She replied. Lith stopped wasting mana, trying to be stealthy, and used it to infuse himself with several elements at once instead. The orcs used their natural abilities and air fusion to boost their speed, but they were still unable to keep up with Lith's pace. Physically they were equal, but the gap between their cores was too big. Lith focused on the weaker orange-cored orc first. Ice spears from the first wand pierced the orc's body, while lightning bolts from the other wand traveled through the ice, striking directly the internal organs. Lith used wands instead of spells to not waste mana, and make his victories more believable. The yellow-cored orc suffered the same fate. Even knowing Lith's strategy, there was nothing the creature could do to stop him. Both the corpses released a dart of light before they could be stored inside the dimensional ring. This doesn't make sense. Now, it was Lith's turn to be shocked. Whatever these creatures were, they weren't awakened. I was wrong before. That wasn't a tier 2 wind blade. That was simply a boosted shore magic spell. All 3 orcs didn't use a single proper spell. It's like they never practiced magic before. Also, why I couldn't store any of the bodies until the accumulated mana departed? I have a crazy theory. Solus thought. Crazy is better than nothing. Lith replied. What if those creatures were just normal orcs? What if somehow they borrowed those powers and after their deaths, the mana returned to its rightful owner? It would explain why the mana was alive and where it did go. Only one way to be sure. We have to rush back to the unit and check the remaining 3 orcs. Lith started to move even before their telepathic conversation was over. Killing the orcs had taken him less than a minute, so he considered unlikely for his comrades to be dead. He was right. When Lith arrived, the battle was still ongoing and the cadets were winning. Nilo's decision to move the unit to the clearing had allowed them to keep the orcs at bay. The cadets had used earth wands to build obstacles and trenches that made it impossible for the orcs to get close without getting caught by barrages of spells. As Lith had imagined, with their weak cores and only chore magic at their disposal, the orcs were sitting ducks at long range. Fusion magic allowed them to tank part of the damage, but their defeat was only a matter of time. Tired and frustrated, the creatures sought shelter inside one of the trenches. They took each other's hand, allowing the energies inside themselves to resonate in unison. Solus looked at their cores getting stronger and stronger. She was incapable of believing her own mana sense. That's our thing. The shock prevented her from being clearer. The orcs are becoming one, she said, only making Lith even more confused. Chapter 356. What the heck does it mean the orcs are becoming one? Lith hated when things went beyond his comprehension. Sadly, it happened most of the time he was forced to risk his life. Are they doing a threesome off their bucket list, merging into a 3-headed creature, or what? Gross times 2, Solus replied. I mean, their cores are resonating, just like we do some, Tim. Wait, I stand corrected. Only one core is actually getting stronger, the other 2 stabilized already. It's easier if I show you. Solus shared her recent memories, allowing Lith to see that the 3 orcs were even weaker than the ones he had killed earlier. 2 had an orange core, and only 1 orc had a yellow core. Clearly the orcs coming from the front are just a diversion. Lith thought. This explains why they are still so far. They were expecting their companions to strike from behind. By now the orcs have realized something went wrong and are changing their tactic accordingly. He could see with Solus's mana vision that after the orcs' cores started resonating, one of the orange cores had been promoted to yellow and was quickly advancing toward becoming green. Why boost an orange core when they have a yellow one available? Lith pondered. The female they are overdosing with mana is even the weakest among the 3. It took just a second for Lith and Solus to understand the meaning of such an action. Orcs were a utilitarian race. Each member of the tribe was but a tool to an end for its leaders. The cadets didn't stand idly, not giving the orcs a second of respite. As soon as their enemies disappeared inside the trench, the cadets used their wands to unleash a hail of ice spikes to smoke them out. Lith could see with life vision that the life force of the orcs was dropping fast. They had to act soon, before they became corpses. Lith took his earth wand from the dimensional ring, ready to counter whatever the suicidal orc had in mind. The creature jumped out of the trench covered in blood, yet at the same time, the deep green aura enveloping her body made the orc appear majestic and dangerous. Take it down, Nilo ordered. The cadets obeyed their corporal. They focused their aim on the standing orc, who darted forward like a bullet. She was now almost too fast for them to see. The female orc danced around the obstacles set in her course with the grace of a ballerina and the speed of a cheetah. Switch to lightning. I said it's too slow. So far, Sergeant Tepper was proud of Nilo's performance. These kids sure have rotten luck. Facing a tribe with a shaman can be a real hassle, even for veterans. If it was a big tribe, that is, according to our scouts, there are only 20 orcs. 3 are already dead, and if the unit doesn't screw up, the tribe will soon be down to 14 members. The cadets might be able to wipe the tribe out. It would do wonders for their careers. Tepper looked briefly at Lith. How did he manage to kill 3 orcs that fast and without a scratch? He thought while hearing Commander Barion's voice echoing in his head over and over. Does he get the job done? The cadets needed but a moment to switch their wands. Yet as soon as the hail stopped, the orc was able to move unimpeded. She leaped forward to cross all the trenches at once and reach her targets. It was a simple but effective plan. Also, it was exactly what Lith had been expecting the whole time. What a moron! Once you leave the ground, You can't change direction or speed anymore. Lith thought while erecting a stone wall in front of the female orc, who crashed into it with enough strength to broke her nose, jaw, and skull at once. Don't let your guard down. Solus warned him. Her core is still in overload. It's going to blow up any second. Who do you take me for? Lith scoffed. I never let my guard down until the monster is dead. He kept waving his wand, creating 3 more walls that trapped the still confused orc, leaving her only one predictable way out. Fire in the hole. Nilo ordered, and the unit executed. The 4 walls created by Lith formed an enormous chimney. All the cadets threw a fire roots, the alchemic equivalent of a concussion grenade, into its hole. None of the fire roots missed the target. The resulting explosion made the stone walls crumble, burying the orc under a ton of rubble. After an orange light departed from under the rocks, the 2 remaining orcs came out of their hiding spot and kneeled with their faces on the ground. Good job, Corporal. Tepper nodded. Now kill the last orcs and finish the job. A long moment of silence followed the order. The orcs were monsters who had tried to kill them until a second ago, but they were now surrendering. The unit's hesitation only lasted that long before they unleashed a barrage of spells that butchered the helpless creatures. Blood, guts, and excrement flew everywhere. Killing them from a distance was the right move, but the next time only use lightning bolts for the finishing touch. Ice magic always makes a mess. Tepper said. Lith was about to collect the corpses when the sergeant stopped him. Nice move trapping the enemy like that, Cadet Lith. How did you know the orc was going to blow itself up? I didn't. Leet. I just wanted to stop her movements. A good call anyway. Tepper nodded. Change of plans, cadets. What you have just seen is proof that the tribe has a shaman. An orc shaman is more than a simple mage. With the right tools, it can greatly enhance the strength of the whole tribe. The effects of their magic are only temporary, just like our potions. Yet, even a single shaman can turn a small tribe in a force to be reckoned with. Each orc becomes stronger, faster, and can use chore magic with enough power to make it deadly. Also, as you got this close to experiencing it on your skin, they can turn their weakest members into powerful bombs. Since we don't have mages on our side, Tepper stared at Lith during the last phrase. You have the right to ask considering the mission successfully completed. Killing a shaman is way beyond the purpose of the field test. 1 or more of you could get killed if you face them without a good plan. On the other hand, you can also decide to continue the mission. Make your choice. While the unit discussed the matter at hand, Lith stored the 2 corpses away. We want to continue the mission, sir, Nilo said. For the first time since the unit had been formed, they were happy having Lith by their side. Him single-handedly killing half the enemies had been a key factor in their decision. Tepper nodded, giving them new ones to replace their used ones. In such a case, you'll need my help. I'll take care of the shaman, but you still have to deal with 13 more orcs on your own. Chapter 357. I think it's better if Lith acts as our scout together with Vipley, sir. Nilo said. Why do you ask my permission, Corporal? Your mission, your rules. The sergeant replied. How many orcs can you face at once on your own? Nilo asked Lith. Depends. 3 if they are as weak as those you just killed. 2 otherwise. Hearing Lith referring to the orcs as weak sent a shiver running down the cadet's spine. Tepper was really curious to see the corpses of those Lith had killed by himself, but it could wait until the end of the mission. Based on the information we have and how fast the orcs spotted us, their camp should be nearby. Feel free to engage the enemy, but don't get too far from us. If you spot anything suspicious, your first priority is to warn me. Are we clear? Lith inwardly smiled. Seeing Nilo acting tough reminded him of Floria. The 2 girls couldn't be more different, since Nilo was just 1.6 meters tall, with red hair and green eyes. Yet something in her tone made him recall a few happy memories. Yes, sir, Lith replied before disappearing into the woods. Judging by the sergeant's reaction, what we have seen so far isn't anything special, Solus thought. I wonder why the bestiary was so vague about the shaman's powers. Probably because the author never met one, Lith shrugged. At the academy, we focused more on copying everything we could about specializations and magical ingredients rather than worrying about monsters. In the 4 years we spent there, we barely managed to get everything we needed about magic. Copying the whole library would have taken me a lifetime, not to mention that Solispedia isn't that big. The magical space that Lith called Solispedia and that gave him instant access to all the knowledge stored inside had kept expanding as Solis regained her strength. It was never enough. Between all the books Lith owned in his own grimoires, Solispedia was always full to the brim. What really bothers me is how they managed to find us so far from their camp. I didn't notice any array on our path. What about you, Solis? Me neither, but I can't keep Mana Sense always active. It consumes too much mana. I prefer to keep it for battle and perform sweeps from time to time, she replied. Meanwhile, at the orc settlement, Ragash the shaman was deeply worried. About an hour ago, his holy crystal had warned her about 12 humans closing in to their position. After blessing 6 of her best warriors with the power of the gods, she had eagerly waited for their return. Human meat was a delicacy, and the women needed all the food they could get to increase the orcs' numbers. Their Grey Wolf tribe had almost been wiped out by the Red Worm tribe, whose shaman wanted Ragash's holy crystal for himself. Their victory had cost the Grey Wolf most of their warriors, so they had been forced to run away before the other tribes could exploit their weakened state. When the warriors returned, it wasn't in the way Ragash was expecting. One after the other, the blessings she had bestowed upon the 3 greatest warriors of the tribe had reunited themselves with the holy crystal. Something had slain them like they were flies. Before Ragash could seek the holy crystal's guidance, the remaining 3 warriors she had sent had followed their war siblings in their travel to the afterlife. This doesn't make sense. And, translated from Orcish, Testalash the war chieftain couldn't believe his own eyes. 6 lives were sent to slay our enemies, and 6 lights returned. Are you sure they are humans? Only magical beasts can slay orcs that fast. Quite sure, Ragash replied. An hour ago they were still quite far, so my readings weren't that accurate. Let me try again. Ragash put her hands on the holy crystal, letting her mana flow into it. The holy crystal wasn't actually a gift from the gods. It was simply a huge violet mana crystal the size of an adult human man. It was also the most sacred relic an orc tribe could possess. Before their fall, orcs shared a deep connection with the mana crystals. So deep it survived even the self-inflicted disaster that destroyed their ancient civilization. Through the violet crystal, Ragash's mana was focused and amplified to the point her life vision could sweep dozens of kilometers at once. There was only so much information her brain could process at once, so she would mistake her own perceptions for a vision sent from the gods. Over the centuries, their science had turned into superstition. Their bloodlust clouded their minds, leaving them forever crippled as a sentient race. Yet when a shaman was born, they would always be awakened ones. Ragash now could perceive their enemies with much greater clarity. There were 10 humans and 2 demons. Ragash screamed in panic, almost fainting due to the shock. Demons? Testalash shuddered in fear. According to the lore, nondescript cruel demons had caused the fall of the orc race. It was totally not their fault. They were certain of it because their elders said so before being eaten for dinner by their own grandkids. You were right. 2 of them are disguised as humans, but they are not. Neither they are beasts or other races. They can only be demons. One is the blackest night, with no stars or moon to light the way. The other is the brightest day, so pure and dazzling it almost blinded me. Ragash's eyes were bloodshot from the effort of withstanding Solis's light. Testalash was a proud chieftain. There was almost nothing he was afraid of. Ragash's words left him unfazed. For almost 10 seconds. There's no time to lose. We must run for our lives. Testalash screamed when his brain realized the meaning of the shaman's words. The chieftain had never met a demon, but he knew facing one meant death. It was what his own father told him before Testalash turned him into a new pair of pants. The chieftain was really fond of them. He wore that skin just like his father did. It was practically a family heirloom. No, we must stand our ground and kill them. The humans are weaker than our newborns, and both demons are lesser ones. The black one is weaker than me, while the white one is even weaker than you. Ragash shook her head, while a cruel smile revealed her jagged teeth. By feasting on their flesh and blood, we'll be able to break the curse that plagues our race. The gray wolf will devour the whole world. With our ancient might back and the holy crystal, we'll be unstoppable. Are you sure eating demons can cure our curse? It's the first time I hear such a thing. Testalash scratched his head in confusion. According to the lore, there was no cure. The demons had made sure of it. Of course I'm sure of it. Ragash screamed in frustration. My own mentor told me about it on his deathbed. Before Ragash turned her into a bedside rug. It was more a dying curse than the passing of knowledge, but that's another story. Chapter 358. The Grey Wolf tribe only had 12 members remaining plus the chieftain and the shaman. Ragash had to think carefully about their strategy. Albeit lesser demons, their enemies were still demons. Of the 12 orcs, 4 just kids. Their bodies were yet to become able to endure the blessing of the holy crystal. The shaman decided to keep them close to her, so in case of emergency, she could turn them into living bombs and get rid of the tribe's enemies. As long as the tribe has women, we can always have more children. Ragash thought, the only things that matter to our survival is the holy crystal and breaking the curse. Everyone else is disposable. The shaman used the crystal once again. This time she didn't panic. Ragash took her time to assess the enemy's strength and position while using her knowledge of the territory to come up with a battle plan. She was the only one capable of rational thought thanks to her awakening. The others, just like Testalash, were mindless brutes, incapable of escaping the clutches of their base instincts. Against a smart enemy equipped with magical weapons like Sergeant Tepper's unit, the blessing of the holy crystal wasn't enough. She needed a foolproof plan, literally. Otherwise, those morons would screw up and leave everything on her shoulders. According to her readings, the demons and the humans were apart, even if not by much. Sending more orcs would be just a waste of resources. I'll let them come here, where the powers of the holy crystal and my magic are at their peak. I'll leave the humans to the tribe, while Testalash and I will take care of the demons. The gods from above and from below are on our side. The 2 demons share the same body, making them a lesser threat than what I feared. We outnumber and outmatch them. Thanks to my new pet, our victory is already written in the stars. Ragash thought. Lith kept coming closer to the orc settlement, yet he met no resistance whatsoever. There were a few traps laid on the ground, but they were devised against animals to get food, not against a real enemy. Orcs are supposed to be stupid. They should have charged at us like mad bulls already. Lith thought while using life vision to check his surroundings. I guess a shaman is a real game changer. Solus pointed out. It's better to go back to the others and ask for more information. The sergeant seemed to know more than what he told us. We should seek his advice. Lithmai nodded. He rushed back to the unit while Solus watched his back with mana sense, allowing him to move at full speed without any worry. How many orcs did you kill? Lywell asked with a big smile on his face. Lith was so used to their ill-concealed scorn that it gave him the creeps. None. That's why I returned. Something is wrong here. The orcs knew our position with enough precision to set an ambush, yet they aren't supposed to be able to use arrays. Lith said, leaving the unit confused. What's an array? They asked each other, receiving only a shrug in reply. Also, they're supposed to be dumb. If that was true, they should either run away or come at us in full force. Yet nothing has happened. I feel like we are walking into a trap. Sergeant, could you please tell us what a shaman is capable of? Sometimes in battle, you're forced to face the unknown, Cadet Lith. A shaman is a rare creature. Even adventurers have a vague knowledge of them. Only the army possess detailed records, and I have already shared with you more than I should. Tepper replied. As a fellow soldier, though, I can say that I think your observations are on point. The shaman seems smart enough to make use of their superior numbers. When you decided to continue the mission, you knew you would face a magician. The whole unit is green, and he wants to send us against an unknown enemy. Lith thought, either he is overestimating himself or underestimating a magician. Or maybe he is overestimating you. Solus suggested. I think that at this point he is sure you are a magician, and the army rules allow you to use your powers in case of emergency. Probably the sergeant thinks that the two of you are more than enough. I wish I shared his optimism. Until I know what kind of core the enemy has or the kind of tricks they're capable of, the only thing I'm sure of is that I can survive. I need to keep at least the sergeant alive. Otherwise, if the entire unit gets butchered, I could get blamed for it. The unit effortlessly advanced through the woods until Lith signaled them to stop. It's a trap indeed, he said, jumping down from a tree without making any noise. The settlement has no guards, and there are no signs of activity. The tribe consists of 10 adults and 4 teenagers. 8 adults are spread outside what I presume is the shaman's tent and are armed to the teeth. What about the mana crystal? Sergeant Tepper asked with eyes full of expectation. I saw no crystal. Leet leet. Maybe it's inside the tent. I can't see through walls. The bastard knows about the crystal. Lith inwardly cursed. Thanks to life vision and mana sense, Lith had now a clear idea of the enemy's strength. His comrades had only one path to victory. If they managed to keep the orcs at bay, they would win. Otherwise, it would be a slaughter. Inside the tent, Lith had spotted a bright cyan-cored orc that was likely to be the shaman, a very bulky individual at least 2 meters, 6 feet 7 inches tall, and 4 children that seemed to be around 12 years old. Near to them, there was the biggest and most powerful mana crystal Lith had ever seen. He had hoped to keep its existence a secret to snatch it away during the fight. It was a priceless natural treasure with endless application to Lith's studies. There has to be a mana crystal, otherwise the shaman couldn't empower other orcs. Tepper said, orcs consider them gifts from the gods. They would rather die than leave one behind. The Mage Association highly values orcs' crystals. They hope to understand the secrets of the shaman's powers by studying them. We have to retrieve it safely at all costs. What is our priority? Lith asked, wiping out the orcs or retrieving the crystal? Your primary objective is to remain alive. Sergeant Tepper sighed. He had almost forgotten he was with cadets, not an elite force. The secondary objective is to wipe out the orcs. If we do that, the crystal will fall into our hands. What's a crystal? Nilo asked, relieving Lith from his burden. The more he learned about the orcs, the more the mission appeared suicidal in his eyes. Sending the cadets forward without warning them about mana crystals would just add insult to the injury. Tepper briefly explained the unit the mana crystal's uses, properties, and volatile nature. With all due respect, I don't think we can do it, sir. Nilo said after Lith draw her a rough sketch of the orc settlement and the enemy positions. Chapter 359. The orcs have the home advantage, are physically superior, and have a magician on their side. We can't set a trap without being noticed, nor can we handle 8 adults at once. Also, the children's position is highly suspicious. I don't think they are close to the tent to keep them safe, but rather to use them as sacrifices. A single one could throw our formation into disarray and doom us all. Not to mention, we cannot even bombard the shaman's tent without the crystal exploding. I agree with your analysis, Corporal. Tepper nodded. Their behavior is highly unusual, even for the presence of shaman. The orcs were supposed to send another wave of warriors and attempt to escape after their second failed attack. Orcs being cautious is almost unprecedented. They regard humans as food, not enemies. Yet they are acting as if they are afraid of us. We need reinforcements. Lith, you can use dimensional magic, right? Lith nodded, while watching his companion's expression turn to a mix of surprise, envy, and hate. Tepper noticed it too. He is not a noble. Lith comes from a family of farmers. He became a magician thanks only to his own hard work. Show some respect. The sergeant's words left everyone dumbstruck. To them, meeting a magician of commoner origins was like finding a unicorn under a rainbow with a pot of gold in its mouth. Bring us back to the camp, Tepper ordered. Lith attempted to open a warp steps, but the dimensional door quickly became unstable, shattering before it was fully formed. This is bad. Lith clicked his tongue. Something like this has only happened to me once in the past. It means the orc shaman is preparing something big and powerful enough to upset the normal elemental balance. Solus, Why didn't you warn me of the array? Lith was surprised. It wasn't like her to make such a rookie mistake. There is no array, she explained, nor any significant disturbance in the world energy. Quite the contrary, the air is really quiet and the mana thin. How thin? Lith asked. Not much, but now that you mention it, there is something wrong. Solus needed to focus her mana sense to the extreme to separate the world energy into the 6 elements that composed it. By my maker, this is exactly the opposite of what that wyvern did. There is no abundance of an element this time. The earth magic in the air is less than half of what it should be. I can see it being siphoned towards the orc encampment. Do you mean you can't warp us back? Tepper inwardly cursed. Even if he called for reinforcements, it would take them too long to find the unit's actual position. I think I can, but it will take time and effort. I need you to watch my back, Lith said to his comrades, but he meant those words for Solus alone. She was still tired from the overuse of her mana sense, yet Solus reassured him and kept watch. Now my equals warriors equals receive equals the equals power equals of equals the equals earth equals God equals and equals become equals their equals avatars equals /ow. Ragash had used invigoration, though the mana crystal, as if it were a part of her own body. With the combined effect of invigoration and the natural ability of purple crystals to absorb the world energy, the shaman had collected an enormous amount of mana. Ragash had called upon earth magic in particular to make her pawns invincible. The world energy seeped into the warrior's mana cores, temporarily boosting them from the red level to the yellow one. Such unnatural status would have been their demise if not for the orcs' peculiar physiology. Their bodies contained very few impurities, allowing them to grow strong enough to withstand the power of an awakened core, even if only temporarily. The crystal was a key element in the process. It was not only capable of storing the necessary world energy, but it also kept it pure. If Ragash had attempted to give them her mana, it would be like poison to them. Only in its purest form could world energy be absorbed without being rejected. The earth elemental energy coursing through the warriors' bodies would double the effects of earth fusion, making them immune to lightning and resistant to all the other elements. Yet it came with a price. Only the strongest orcs could survive their cores being enhanced not once, but twice. Ragash could see energy cracks appearing on the skin of 5 out of the 8 warriors she had blessed. They only had a few minutes left to live. The weak can only blame themselves. Ragash thought, the demon's meat is too precious to be wasted on failures. Their death was only a matter of time. While the orcs charged towards the human's position, the shaman and the chieftain followed them from a distance. Testalash carried the holy crystal on his back, while the ground emitted a low rumble wherever Ragash stepped. Orcs incoming. Vipley screamed on the top of his lungs from the top of a tree. Lith inwardly cursed while pushing his willpower to the limit to compensate for the lack of earth elemental energy with his own mana. Finally, the warp steps appeared, but instead of being static as usual, its edges spun like a buzz saw. They emitted sparks every time Lith sent new waves of mana to prevent it from collapsing. One after the other, the cadets rushed through it until only Nilo and the sergeant were left. We can't leave Lith behind. They will kill him. As the commanding officer, Nilo felt it was her responsibility to remain behind with him. That's why I'll stay here, Tepper said while throwing her through the gate. There's no need for us all to die. Indeed, Lith used spirit magic to push the sergeant away before closing the warp steps. When Tepper's face hit the boot camp's ground, he wasn't angry. Quite the contrary, he was almost moved to the tears. That idiot. Together we had a chance. Alone he is as good as dead. Shamans can prevent an opponent from flying. Without warp steps, he has no way out. I misjudged Lith. He preferred to die a hero rather than see one of us die. He ran to the HQ to request immediate backup. With him as a guide, the mages would only need a few minutes to reach the orc encampment. He could only hope Lith would survive long enough for it to be a rescue mission instead of a revenge one. Meanwhile, on the other side of the crumbled gate, Lith was overjoyed. He was wearing his skinwalker armor again. The gatekeeper's sword was firm in his hand, while invigoration gave Lith back his strength. With no witness messing with my plans, I could pretend to be a hero and get myself a purple crystal. 2 birds with 1 stone. Lith took flight, weaving several spells at once just to be safe. 2 orcs leaped toward him while swinging their weapons, only to be chopped in half like fresh fruit. Lith's flight spell made him even faster than he was with fusion magic, whereas the orcs were sitting ducks while in midair. Worst case scenario, I can rain spells from the skies until they're all dead, or I can run away if the unexpected happens. Killing non-flying opponents is child play. Lith thought. He readied his sword for the second wave of enemies while pouring air magic into it to enhance its edge. Ragash saw Lith descending upon her warriors and acted accordingly. Her hand touched the holy crystal, depriving the environment of the air element and causing the flight spell to fail. Lith crashed in the middle of the orcs, who immediately surrounded him. Where the equals gods equals walk equals the equals humans equals die equals / where Ragash laughed. Chapter 360. By watching the orc warriors' weapons coming down on the demon like they were the wrath of the heavens, Ragash could almost smell the sweet scent of Lith's blood in the air, which is why she was dumbfounded when a fireball exploded on the ground and sent the orcs surrounding Lith flying like leaves scattered by the autumn wind. How is that equals possible? Equals / how Ragash blurted out in her stupor. The lack of air element prevented Lith from flying or casting powerful air spells, but there was more than enough to support a Tier 0 gravity magic trick. Even a shockwave from a simple fireball was enough to buy him some space, once his opponents had become weightless. I think we are in trouble. Solus was worried. The lack of earth magic already prevented us from blinking. Now even flight and lightning bolts are sealed. What if the shaman can seal the other elements too? That's the bad news. The good news is the same applies to them. Lith watched some orcs trying to produce air blades, yet all they managed to do was waste their mana. Their coordination is non-existent. We'll see who runs out of tricks first. Lith's hands moved so fast that for a second, even the shaman only saw a blur. Then, a volley of fireballs and several ice spears darted toward the mana crystal. Ragash attempted to raise a stone wall and failed. Gods below, what have I done? I must protect the holy crystal, she thought. She didn't have the time to nullify 2 elements, and even if she did, it would make her completely useless in combat. The only thing she could do was to push Testalash and the crystal away with spirit magic, while shielding herself with the thickest ice wall she could produce in the little time she had left. She succeeded in saving both the crystal and herself, but it came at a terrible price. Lith had timed the 2 spells so that the fireballs would hit first, shattering the ice protection he knew she would have employed so that the ice spears would find a clear path to the enemy. Ragash was alive, but barely. Chunks of her flesh were missing because of the explosions, and several spears had struck her despite her raising walls one after another. She was already healing her wounds with invigoration, but the aftereffects would leave her weakened nonetheless. What an idiot! Lith inwardly laughed. Playing dirty is a game 2 can play. I want the crystal badly, but not if it costs me my life. By attacking it, I can force the orcs on the defensive. The orcs rushed Lith again. The demon's blasphemous act had pushed their rage to its peak, allowing their bloodlust to blind them. Exactly like Lith wanted. The orcs were a threat to his life only if they coordinated their efforts. They attacked him as if they were alone, giving no consideration to their own companions' movements. Without tactics, the orcs were just an annoyance. Their crude weapons were nothing compared to Gatekeeper. Their boosted cores granted them feeble abilities compared to Lith's bright Cyan one when pushed to its limit. Ragash's plan had only one flaw. Both she and Lith knew it, but only one of them could exploit it. Depriving the world energy of a specific element blocked the related spells, but it couldn't affect fusion magic. Fusion magic didn't rely on external energy, but on the elemental power its user naturally stored. Lith's air fusion could not only make him incredibly fast, but it was also channeled and amplified by the Gatekeeper's enchantment, boosting the sword's edge. A single slash was what it took to cleave an orc asunder, along with the axe with which he had attempted to block. A single lunge would go clear through its intended victim and beyond, wounding those stupid enough to be near its exit point. "Curse you equals demon equals /curse," screamed in anguish as she ripped off the head of one of their youths to consume his flesh to regain her strength. The fight had barely started, yet the number of her warriors had halved, and she was gravely injured. Thanks to invigoration, Ragash was able to instantly assimilate the food's nutrients and restore her strength. Testalash immediately ran to her side. The chieftain was visibly worried for her. Without the shaman, the tribe was as good as dead. The holy crystal would become a liability instead of a treasure. Testalash's life depended on her. The warriors equals, not equals, last equals, long equals, without equals, my equals help. Equals /the Testalash said while delicately leaving the crystal by her side. Do whatever equals you equals need equals but equals try equals to equals keep equals me equals alive. Equals you equals still equals need equals a equals man equals to equals have equals offspring. Equals / do the chieftain didn't trust her more than he would a nest of vipers. His words were meant to remind the shaman that the survival of the Grey Wolf tribe needed at least 2 orcs. He didn't miss how Ragash moved her gaze from him to the remaining 3 youths. There was still a male left, which meant she still had options. Inwardly cursing his bad luck, Testalash unsheathed his great sword and joined the fray. Aside from the holy crystal, the chieftain's blade was the only treasure of the Grey Wolf tribe that had survived the war. It was an enchanted weapon that had fallen into the orcs' hands after its previous owner had fallen into their stomachs. Ragash nodded. Her powers activated the crystal once again, passing all the remaining energy she had stored within it to the chieftain. His core immediately turned from bright yellow to bright cyan, which Solus promptly reported to Lith. For FCK's sake, I hate fair fights, Lith inwardly cursed. Testalash was at least 20 centimeters, 8 inch, taller than Lith and 30 kilograms heavier. Thanks to his awakened-like body, those 30 kilograms were all muscles. Lith had no advantage against Testalash, aside from his own equipment and training. In terms of sheer physical strength, the chieftain was like an adult fighting a prepubescent teen. How long until the balance is restored? Lith hated forcing Solus to consume her remaining mana, but he had no choice. Only when all of Lith's skills were online again, he could safely terminate the orc tribe. Earth is back to normal already. Air should support spells up to Tier 2. Solus replied. She was already so weakened that only her natural senses remained. Solus decided to save the remainder of her mana for an emergency, just to be safe. She could have used invigoration, but unlike Lith's, it required more time and was dependent on her companion status. Using it would not only leave her completely helpless for a while, but could also destabilize Lith's mana flow. Solus couldn't stand by idly either, so she moved from Lith's mouth to his right hand and turned into her glove form. That way he could at least use her as a shield if the need arose. The greatsword gave Testalash the superior range, forcing Lith on the defensive. Their fusion magic was on par, so it was like neither was employing it. The chieftain was faster, stronger, and to make things worse, he shouted orders that made the remaining orcs regain their sanity. Ragash was now back on her feet, using the crystal to infuse one of the young female orcs until the youth screamed in agony. The shaman didn't trust the chieftain more than he trusted her. Ragash wanted to win, no matter the cost. Chapter 361. Meanwhile, the 4 remaining orcs surrounded Lith, threatening him with their weapons from every side. Their duty was to restrict the enemy's movements and create openings for the chieftain. 5 against 5. Once again, I hate fair fights, Lith thought while unleashing his death call spell. For tentacles made of darkness magic came out from his body, targeting the orcs like sharks following blood in water. The warriors stood their ground, clubbing and slashing at the tendrils only to see their weapons getting covered in cracks. Darkness magic wasn't tangible, but its hunger was real. To not get eaten, the 4 orcs were forced to step back whenever Lith came too close to them while dodging the chieftain's blade. Before the boot camp, Lith would have had a hard time against an opponent such as Testalosh. It still wasn't an easy fight, but the skill gap made it manageable. While the chieftain put all of his might behind each strike, Lith used his blade to deflect the opponents by using the least amount of strength possible. Between Deathcall and Lith avoiding their mighty chieftain's blows by a thread, the orcs truly believed they were facing a demon. One of them had been grazed by the tentacles multiple times. The contact had sapped her strength and hastened her body's decay. The female orc's skin was full of cracks. She knew her death would come in a matter of seconds. In her mind, the orc thought the demon was to blame. She had no idea it was all her shaman's doing. The warrior threw herself against Lith, disregarding what little life she had left. The tentacles drained her life force and defused the explosion at the same time, but they weren't fast enough to prevent her from crashing against Lith and sending him towards the chieftain's oncoming blade. Cursing at his bad luck, Lith could only attempt a parry and watch it fail. Testalash's blade clashed with the gatekeeper, moving it aside. The lunge had enough power left to pierce the skinwalker armor and penetrate into Lith's flesh while breaking his collarbone. Lith would have fainted from the shock if he had not cut off his pain receptors at the last second. His left arm was now limp. Blood came out profusely from his shoulder. The only silver lining was that the energy robbed from the dying orc was already mending the wound. The problem was living long enough for it to matter. Testalosh fearlessly pressed forward. The demon is doomed, the chieftain thought. With only one hand and the blood loss sapping his strength, he can't avoid my blade anymore. Follow your equals, sisters equals, example. Equals, use equals, the equals, power equals of equals, the equals, gods equals, to equals, slay equals, the equals, demon. Equals / follow Testalosh yelled. 3 orcs meant 3 more free slashes, which equaled 1 dead demon. Easy math. Lith had no idea what the orc had just yelled, but when Solus warned him about another enemy doing a suicidal rush from behind his back, their plan became evident. Lith knew what to do, but he couldn't afford to turn around, so he let Solus take the wheel. The moment before the orc was about to strike, a stone wall emerged from the ground, stopping the enemy and his weapon at once. The orc had no time to be surprised by Solus's timely use of the earth wand with spirit magic. The ethereal tentacles passed through a wall and seeped into his flesh, renewing Lith's strength at the expenses of the orc's life force. For the equals, gray equals, wolf. Equals / for Ragash yelled at the youth. The little girls screamed in agony and frenzy. The only thing she could think of was making the pain stop. She rushed toward Lith with the speed of a bullet. The mana ravaging her body also gave her superhuman abilities. Lith and Testalosh cursed at the shaman in unison. Neither wanted to die, whereas Testalosh saw only a death threat. Lith saw an opportunity instead. Lith grabbed the stone wall Solus had erected and used gravity magic to turn Testalosh into the new center of gravity. The orc girl's feet leaped from the ground with great strength, almost making her fly, but also leaving her exposed to gravity magic's effects. She found herself falling towards the chieftain while Solus erected a second wall right in front of Lith. It was meant to be used as a foothold and a shield at the same time. Testalosh had no idea what was happening, so he dodged the incoming bomb over and over, hoping to get rid of it. Yet the poor girl followed him like a curse. Realizing he was doomed, the chieftain grabbed the girl and rushed between the 2 stone walls to make sure that Lith would die along with him. Much to Testalosh's dismay, when he got there, Lith was nowhere to be found. In his place, there was what looked like an acorn the size of a fist. It was covered in runes of power which blinked faster by the second. Lith had Solus conjure 1 stone wall after the other and use them as footsteps to escape gravity magic's short range and get to safety. He had also left a fire root as a goodbye gift. The combined explosion of the girl and the fire root turned the stone walls into debris that flew in every direction like deadly bullets. Once again, Ragash had to prevent the crystal from being destroyed. This time she could at least conjure a great stone wall to protect the holy crystal and what little was left of the tribe. Ragash immediately used life vision to find Lith. He's not on the ground nor in the air. Where the heck is he? She thought. The shaman used the power of the holy crystal to sweep the whole area, discovering that Lith was quite far from her position and was getting further by the second. How dares equals, he equals to equals run equals away? Equals, / how Ragash felt she was going crazy. The two remaining orc warriors had fled the moment they saw the living bomb converge to their position. They both considered a cowardly escape much better than a heroic death. Ragash had no way to communicate with them, and even if she did, the shaman doubted they would listen to her anymore. All that was left of the Grey Wolf were her and the two kids. What a cowardly, sly creature, Ragash thought. I can't follow the demon. The children are too weak to carry the crystal, even if I bless them a little. If I carry it myself, I'd be a sitting duck. At least I'm safe now. Yet actually she wasn't. Lith hadn't run away. He had seen the shaman eating and meant to even the field. Why would I rush in against an unknown opponent with a wounded body and my mana depleted when I can take a break? He thought while eating some meat from his pocket dimension. I'll wait for the world energy to stabilize again, so I can have full access to my spells. How are you, Solus? Much better, thanks. I think retreating was the right move. All that spell casting and fighting had left you drained. How is your shoulder? Perfectly healed. I'll use invigoration to get back to my peak form before going in for the kill. Lith replied. He had no idea what the shaman could do with her crystal, but he was certain Ragash would rather detonate it than leave it in his hands. Lith used that time to sort through his alchemic weapons. Even if Ragash siphoned elemental energy again, he could still use them, since the spells they contained were already formed. The problem was that unlike his own incantations, alchemical weapons could hurt their user. Chapter 362. I don't like this situation, Lith thought. The shaman seems to always know where I am. She caught us unprepared twice, so it's likely that if I stand for too long in the same place, she may attack us from a distance. Agreed, Solus replied. She had regained about half of her strength, but they couldn't afford to wait much longer. If the sergeant returned with the reinforcements, the crystal would be lost. We need to aim for a quick exchange. We have to get there fast before she can siphon any element so that we can blink in for the kill. Lith nodded. That kind of approach was outside his comfort zone, but there weren't many options left. He took off, flying at full speed towards the location where he had killed most of the members of the Grey Wolf tribe. Ragash hadn't gotten far. Moving the holy crystal was a delicate job. She couldn't fly with it. If anything happened and the spell was broken, the holy crystal would be lost. She just made it float a few centimeters from the ground, pushing it while she walked back toward the camp. The silver lining was that thanks to the constant contact, she could sweep her surroundings from time to check on Litha's whereabouts. As soon as Ragash noticed him getting closer, she knew only one of them would come out alive from their next meeting. Go back equals to equals, the equals village equals, and equals hide. Equals if equals I equals don't equals return equals, within equals, a equals few equals, minutes equals run equals away equals, and equals never equals turn equals back. Equals / go, Ragash ordered. The youths never thought, even for a second, that the shaman was doing that to protect them. Her only purpose was to protect the last members of the tribe, who were too weak to be of any use in actual combat. Ragash had seen how Lith had turned her own living bomb against her orc warriors. It was a mistake she couldn't afford to repeat. She watched the two youths disappearing in the woods as she pondered about her strategy. Ragash wasn't used to fight alone, without any warrior providing her assistance. The demon's magic is unpredictable, she thought. My only option is to overpower them quickly with the help of the holy crystal. If only that stupid beast helped us earlier, I wouldn't be in dire straits now. What kind of pet doesn't protect its owner? The earth trembled below her feet. It was the only sign that the creature was still following her. Ragash called it her pet, but its motives were still a mystery. It had helped her to survive many times, yet its timing was always unreliable at best. Ragash placed her hands on the crystal, channeling air magic through it to conjure a huge storm cloud above her position. Monster's mastery of magic was shallow. Due to their fallen nature, they would seldom be able to research complex spells and would even more rarely pass them down. In a might makes right society, sharing knowledge or power was like digging your own grave. That limited the shaman's knowledge to the first 3 tiers of spells. Thanks to the Holy Crystal, though, Ragash could replicate Tier 4 spells' effect or at least equal their destructive power. As soon as Lith spotted the shaman with life magic, he also noticed a pillar of mana going from the ground to the sky. The storm cloud was pitch black and covered a radius of 100 meters around the shaman's position already. "She's stealing my thunder, literally," Lith thought. He was actually scared by how fast Ragash had summoned such a huge thundercloud. It was something he was still unable to do. "I wouldn't worry about that," Solus chimed in. "There is something wrong with the ground below her feet. I thought the lack of earth element in the world energy was confusing my perception, but even now that the balance is restored, the anomaly is still there." "What kind of anomaly?" Lith's paranoia sense was tingling. Life vision showed him nothing but trees, grass, the shaman, and the crystal. Yet he didn't doubt Solus's words for an instant. He knew his senses were far better than his own. "It's a blur, so I can't tell you what it is nor how strong it is, but there's something moving there. It could be some kind of spell, a creature, anything. Just be vigilant, okay?" Lith mentally nodded as he charged the gatekeeper with all elements but light magic. As soon as Ragash's eyes met Lith's, she unleashed a natural lightning so big that its flash turned the whole world white for a second, almost blinding her. Lith was able to react in time only because he had done the same thing in the past. The moment he saw a pulse of Ragash's mana reaching for the thundercloud, he blinked behind her back, aiming for her head. Lith's timing had been impeccable, the precision of his lunge surgical. Yet instead of relieving the shaman's neck from the burden of its head, Lith was sent flying before he could even understand what was happening. Something big and black had jumped out of the ground, as nimble as a shark after a seal. Solus had no way to describe it if not as a worm, but it was a worm like she had never seen before. Its skin wasn't pink nor soft. The creature looked like made of obsidian, with several bumps and deformities all around its body like a lazy artist had given up the job halfway through. The worm was as big as a bull and about 4 meters, 13 foot, long. Its gaping mouth was big enough to easily swallow an adult man whole. Solus could see it had multiple series of jagged teeth, which somehow were rotating at high speed, like a buzz saw. It had been the impact between the teeth and the gatekeeper to thwart Lith's death blow. When the clash happened, the enchanted blade managed to resist the teeth's destructive force, but it couldn't escape their grasp. The centrifugal force had spun Lith and the blade, as if for a split second they had been trapped inside a washing machine, before all the accumulated magic in the gatekeeper had forced the creature to release its prey. Between the impact and the spinning, Lith's vision was a blur. Yet the black worm wasn't faring much better. It writhed on the ground like a beached fish, spitting blood and teeth before reaching again for the safety of the earth. What the heck was that? Lith and Ragash's thought in unison. Whereas Lith was wondering why the magical beast had interfered, Ragash's was shocked by dimensional magic. Both the magicians recovered quickly from the surprise, moving on to their own plan B. Lith blinked away, not giving the shaman the time to aim at him with a second lightning, while Ragash's embraced the crystal, starting to chant a second spell. Lith threw against her several fire roots to force her to interrupt her casting and focus on defending the crystal. Yet the moment the alchemical tools touched the ground, small holes opened below them, making them disappear. When they exploded a few seconds later, they were already gone so deep that the explosion was completely muffled by the ground, sounding more like farts. Everything happened so fast that Ragash didn't even have the time to notice the threat. Chapter 363. Seriously, what the FCK is that? Lith inwardly cursed at the worm. There is no mention of such a creature in all the bestiaries I own. It doesn't seem an evolved monster, but it's not dumb either. How strong is its core? Unknown. I can't see the mana core, just like I can't see its life force. I can barely pinpoint its location by following the anomaly it creates in my mana sense. Either that creature has special abilities, or that black stuff covering its body, it's not skin, but a jamming device. Solus replied, "This means I'm not just facing a shaman, but also another unknown enemy. There's no way someone that can't even use dimensional magic has tamed or equipped the worm." Lith was seriously considering to give up on the crystal. Whoever had the talent and the means to shield something from Solus's senses had to be at least as good as her maker. Even if he managed to slay the beast, its owner wasn't an opponent he could take lightly. Ragash completed her chant, opening a channel between her and the crystal. Now she could not only access to all of its powers without the need of the physical contact, but also could use the crystal's energy like it was her own. It was a desperate move for desperate times. The longer the channel was open, the more likely Ragash was to die from mana overload. Until then, she would have access to an almost infinite supply of mana. The first thing she did was to wrap the holy crystal with the strongest materials the ground had to offer. That way she could completely disregard its safety and focus on the demon. "Incoming from your 4. Solus warned Lith, who darted upwards just in time to avoid the worm's charge. It moved so fast, causing only such small trembling in the ground's mouth that without her warning Lith would have never noticed it. The worm's mouth was wide open, which allowed Solus's spirit magic to feed it a generous serving of fire roots, black lotus petals, broken lightning wands, and a sprinkle of green pepper. As someone who had studied alchemy during the last 4 years, she knew exactly what kind of ingredients were never to be mixed. Unless, of course, one wanted to trigger an uncontrollable chain reaction that resulted in the death of anyone in a 10 meters, 33-foot radius. The first explosion made the worm squirm in mid-aid, messing with its landing. It hit the ground with the same grace of a wet sock before starting to dance around like a firecracker. Smoke, blood, and teeth came out nonstop as the explosions grew in frequency and power. Lith had barely the time to grin at his partner's brilliance when Ragash raised her hand and unleashed a barrage of spells like Lith had never witnessed before. The ground below him shot rock spikes as big as an arm. The air surrounding him became so cold that frost formed over Lith's clothes as a hail of fireballs, and a lightning storm struck in every direction, leaving him no way out. The shaman's glowing eyes meant she, too, was using life vision. He couldn't blink recklessly. If Ragash understood how to predict his exit points, Lith's dimensional magic would become useless. When Lith disappeared from her sight, Ragash turned around, expecting him being right behind her. She had no idea the spell had a limited range, so she assumed the worst and reacted accordingly. Yet Lith wasn't there. He was nowhere to be found, to be precise. Since the worm's stone hide hid it so well from life vision and mana sense, Lith had blinked behind it to use it as his cover. The worm was still writhing as it coughed smoke and blood, yet the creature refused to die. The final explosion was strong enough to crack its shell, but not even that seemed to be able to put it down. The worm emitted high-pitched noises that gave Lith the creeps. They sounded too similar to the cries of a newborn. "There you equals are." Equals / there, Ragash yelled when the crystal revealed to her the demon's position. She didn't care for the worm, resuming the assault while calling forth another lightning from the sky at the same time. How can she have so much mana? Lith inwardly cursed before blinking away. The cold is so intense that if not for my natural resistance and the skinwalker armor, I would be already hallucinating. "It's the crystal," Solus explained while keeping an eye on the worm. "It's like she has a cyan and a purple core. The good news is that her body is already collapsing from the exertion. The bad news is that, at this rate, you will die before her. So please do something." Each blink brought Lith higher until the rock spikes couldn't threaten him anymore. His survival took priority compared to giving away how blink worked. Luckily, he had mastered true dimensional magic, so Lith could blink while weaving another spell. Ragash aimed the natural lightning for Lith's exit point, timing the spell so that he wouldn't have the time for another blink. It was the flash accompanying the thunderbolt that revealed her the truth. Its light was reflected on a throwing dagger near her feet. It wasn't an enchanted weapon, so not even life vision could detect it. She didn't have the time to wonder how long it had been there that her world turned upside down. Lith was exactly where she had predicted, but the lightning wasn't. It was about to hit her instead. After each blink, Lith had negatively charged himself to repel the incoming lightning and positively charged his set of throwing daggers, while Solus spread them in a diagonal line with spirit magic. Only a small part of the thunderbolt struck him, but thanks to Earth fusion, Lith managed to escape from the clutches of death. All the remaining energy followed the path of least resistance Lith had created, aiming for that last dagger Ragash had just noticed. Physics rocks, Lith thought as he fell to the ground. Fear froze the shaman to the point she couldn't even close her eyes. Yet much to both magicians' surprise, she survived. The worm that they had left for dead came out of the ground in front of her and shielded Ragash with its body. Not even the black armor could resist the power of nature. The cracks caused by Solus's alchemical cocktail expanded until it was destroyed, revealing the creature inside. It was a rockworm, a magical beast pretty common inside underground dungeons. What the heck is it doing here, and why did it save the shaman? Lith inwardly cursed at the beast. Ragash didn't have the time to rejoice. Her body was very close to collapse, and for some reason, her strongest weapon had been turned against her. To make things worse, her pet had fallen too. She had no choice but to use her last trump card. Every time a shaman used the holy crystal, their bond became stronger. The crystal gave them mana, and they gave it bits of their life in return. An expert shaman could feel those bits and use them to access the memories of the past shamans. It wasn't even a spell, it was simply another kind of exchange, a bit of life of a bit of the past lives of others. Ragash could only hope that one of her ancestors knew a spell capable of killing the demon, and that accessing it wouldn't cost her sanity. Chapter 364. Ragash's mind delved inside the crystal, only to find her own dreams and ambitions. Then, she went deeper, finding more and more shards of light representing the memories of others. She ignored those which belonged to her mentor. Ragash's teacher wasn't even a real shaman. She had been so weak that Ragash killed her as soon as she came of age. Most of the lives she explored were equally insignificant. May the gods below eat their useless souls. How long has it been since there was a shaman rather than a crystal bearer? Ragash thought. In her desperation, she had forgotten that shamans were rare. What she was attempting required time, but that was something she didn't have. Lith was sick and tired of this fight. The moment Ragash stopped her movements, he cast one of the Tier 5 Battle Mage spells he had mastered with true magic. As long as she has that damned crystal, she has the mana core advantage. Yet despite her use of very powerful incantations, they were all low-tier ones. If I can't beat her with quantity, I'll go with quality. Lith had prepared Burial Ground from the moment he noticed the thundercloud. Burial Ground was a versatile spell that could be used for both offense and defense. The reason he had yet to employ it was Ragash's ability to neutralize the elements. Powerful spells were very delicate. The slightest imbalance in the world energy would render them little more than a waste of mana. Luckily, the shaman spaced out long enough for the spell to take form and make the crystal's siphoning ability useless. Several pillars erupted from the ground at once, surrounding the orc. Each one of them kept growing in height, while countless stone spikes emerged from the pillars and extended in every direction. Some attempted to stab the shaman, while others connected with other spikes, forming new pillars that generated even more spikes. Thanks to life vision, Ragash could see that the spell was a hybrid of earth and darkness magic. The stone pillars were a conduit for the dark energies, so even standing close to them was enough to sap her life force. Damn demon, I found the spell I needed only to not have the opportunity to use it. Ragash thought. She had no time to focus on elaborate spells. The cage was getting smaller by second. Dodging the ever-increasing number of spikes required her full focus. She released a barrage of low-level spells to make Burial Grounds crumble. But the darkness magic also acted as a shield, weakening her spells before they even hit. The cage repaired itself almost as soon as it was damaged. The only thing that could counter a high-tier spell was another high-tier spell. Ragash's body was soon pierced by the spikes that kept growing and ravaging her internal organs. In a last-ditch effort, she tried to make the crystal detonate, but it was too late. The exertion from using spells non-stop had taken its toll. Even though her mind was still alive, her body refused to obey. Her mana stopped flowing. Her mana core had already started turning gray. Her will extended no further than her thoughts while the cage shrank until all that remained of the orc shaman was mincemeat. As soon as Ragash died, Lith changed into his army uniform and stored the crystal inside Solus's pocket dimension along with the pieces of the rockworm's black armor. Lith knew it was just a matter of time before someone arrived. He was preparing for the final act of his masquerade. He only kept the gatekeeper outside, since unlike the clothes, he could make it disappear without anyone noticing. "Don't play dumb with me," Lith said, waking up the rockworm that was still unconscious after being hit by the lightning. "If you were a human, I would have already killed you. But since you are a magical beast, I'll give you a chance. I know you can speak. Tell me what you're doing here and why you try to kill me. If I do as you say, will you let me go?" The worm asked. "If you don't, I'll kill you right now." Lith replied. "Solus, how strong is this thing?" "Pretty strong for a magical beast. Its core is cyan, but what's more interesting is that it also has a dormant black core." Solus warned Lith. "Just like the wyvern we faced at Xanatos. Without the black armor, she was able to use her mana sense again." Her findings shocked her and sent a shiver down Lith's spine. He immediately used air magic to make the beast float, afraid it could suck the life force of the plants to heal itself with its black core. "I'm here for the crystal. My master sent me to retrieve it." The worm replied, hoping to buy enough time to find a chance to escape. "Otherwise, I wouldn't have wasted my time with filthy orcs, nor would I have saved that incompetent shaman time and time again." "Your words make no sense," Lith replied. "Why didn't you just steal the crystal from the beginning if your aim was just to take possession of it? Each of the fallen races has a unique trait. The orcs have the ability to manipulate mana crystals as no one else can." "Fallen races?" Lith asked. It was the first time he had heard such a term. Fallen races, monsters, lost children of Mogr. Different names for the same thing. Failures. The beast explained with a hint of rage in its voice. "My master has long researched for a way to imitate their talent to no avail. Even interrogating shamans proved to be useless. Their superstitions are so strong that it makes them immune to any kind of torture. So, after several failures, the master decided to change his approach. First, I found a tribe with a shaman and a powerful crystal. Then, I followed the crystal and applied a marking spell to it. Every time the shaman used its power, the marking spell would leave behind a trace for the master to follow. At that point, all that was left to do was to force the shaman to use all of her abilities before retrieving the crystal. It took me several years to trigger enough tribal wars to collect the data I needed, yet I never managed to force the shaman to use her most powerful abilities. At least until now. The soul exchange that Ragash used was the last piece of the puzzle, something only a skilled awakened orc can use. I can't believe that after all my efforts to groom her and assure her survival, it was her idiocy that doomed us both. The master had given the worm the black armor to make it impervious to magic and almost untraceable. Almost. The master had no idea something like mana sense existed, nor that his minion would suffer so much damage that not even his black core could heal it quickly enough for it to matter. "Who is this master?" Lith asked. The rockworm wasn't a zealot. The master had proved incapable of making it evolve and refused to turn it into an abomination because it was still too weak. The creature owed nothing to their cause. Chapter 365. If I tell the awakened the truth, that the master is just a human, he'll have no reason to spare me. I have to bluff my way out. The creature thought. The master is a powerful undead. They are watching us even now. Kill me, and they'll send their legions to avenge my death. "Solus," Lith asked. "Nothing." she replied after a deep scan with all her senses. She even analyzed the single elements composing the world energy, which gave her a terrible headache. No trace of spells or even of other anomalies in the area. I can faintly see someone incoming, though. I don't know the others, but one of them is Tepper. Lith pierced the worm with the gatekeeper, infusing it with enough darkness magic to turn it into dust. Why did you kill it? It could have still talked. Solus asked. It would have just fed us more lies, and we have no more time. The sergeant and several mages arrived a minute later and circled around the area, looking at the traces of the battle. Before joining them, Lith warped Solus under his bed, just to be safe. He had no idea if they would believe him, nor what tools the army had at its disposal to search him for dimensional items. They were all surprised to see Lith in one piece, and when he reported that the crystal was gone, their worries turned into suspicion. Lith told them most of the truth. He only belittled his wounds, which Solus had replicated on the uniform before leaving, and explained how, after the shaman's defeat, the worm had swallowed the crystal before disappearing underground. Do you have any proof of your claim? An elder mage asked him with a stone-cold voice. I only have some pieces of its armor. They fell off when I tried to stop it with a barrage of spells. Lith handed them a black stone that left the mages stunned. This is Darwin, one of them exclaimed. It's a rare material capable of nullifying most detection arrays and resisting magic. How much did you get? Not much. Just the pieces inside my ring. The rest was inside the pocket dimension, but judging by their smiling faces, it was still quite a catch. Damn, I should have kept more. Lith inwardly cursed at himself. The silver lining is that they will be more inclined to believe me now. The elder mage took Lith's ring as he stared in his eyes. Young man, this ring is an army property. We can break your imprint and check its content anytime. Do you realize that both the crystal and the Darwin you found both belong to the kingdom? That you, as a cadet, are one of its servants? Lith nodded. If we find you in possession of stolen items, you'll be charged with treason. Are you sure you don't want to amend your story? Lith nodded again. This is preposterous. Tepper objected. He risked his life for the unit. Without him, my cadets and I will be dead. The kingdom would have lost good soldiers, the crystal, and the Darwin. How can you doubt his word? The elder mage sighed. Commander Berrien is right. The sergeant is a naive idiot and the cadet can't be trusted. Greed blinds even the best of us, especially mages. The elder replied before casting a diagnostic spell that examined the content of Lith's body, with particular care for his mouth, stomach, and anus. They were the places where thieves hid their dimensional items. After that, he chanted a short spell that broke Lith's connection to the dimensional ring and examined its contents. As the cadet had stated, there were only the corpses of a few orcs and some Darwin pieces. Sergeant Tepper looked at the elder with a fiery gaze as the mage's cheeks turned red from embarrassment. I'm sorry for doubting your word, Cadet Lith, but I had to be sure. No harm, no foul. Lith replied, my paranoia is once again the MVP. He inwardly sighed in relief. After they returned to the camp, Lith was stripped and searched again with the diagnostic spell. Only after interrogating him for an hour did they finally let him go. He never contradicted himself, because most of what he said was true. When he returned to the barracks, the other cadets gave him the salute before extending their hands. Why do people only like me after I kill a lot of bad guys? Lith thought, because that's the only moment when it seems like you care for them. Solus sarcastically replied after reuniting with him. How did you kill so many orcs? How did you defeat the shaman? Were just some of the questions he had to reply to over and over for the rest of the day as the story of his battle became public knowledge. From the next day, his life returned to normal. Until the end of the boot camp, he managed to outperform his peers without engendering any more ill will. Him being a mage was a secret, so of course soon everyone knew about it. It made him pretty popular, especially with the female cadets, but not for the reason he hoped for. The greatest deterrent against relationships in a boot camp were pregnancy and a lack of contraceptive potions. A mage was an obvious solution to the problem. At the end of every day, Lith would find a line of people asking for his help. I feel like a condom machine. All the work and none of the fun. He thought multiple times, yet he never refused. It was a small price to pay to be universally appreciated. Before the graduation ceremony, every cadet received 2 days of leave to reconnect with their families before being moved according to their career choices, if they had one, of course. When Lith returned home, his family welcomed him like he was returning from war rather than from the camp. They weren't used to not seeing him for such a long period of time. Lith spent every day and evening with his relatives, especially with his little brother and his niece. In those 6 months, they had grown a lot, and he felt he had lost so much. During the nights, he worked on a mana crystal and studied the Darwin he had recently acquired. Just like darkness energy is entropy and destruction, light magic is life and order. It allows giving shape even to what is shapeless. Lith thought while creating small holograms of the monsters he had faced while telling fairy tales to the kids. Sometimes he even projected for his family some of the animated movies he still remembered from Earth. He made up the voices with their magic. The holograms were all in shades of gray. The background was non-existent, yet every time they had guests, they would always ask for an encore. Chapter 366. 2 nights weren't enough for a complete study of Lith's spoils of war, but they were more than enough for a preliminary analysis. If the violet crystal has something special, I'm not able to notice it, Lith said while storing it inside his tower. Guess both the sergeant and the Rockwar were right. The gemstone per se is just like any other. It's the orcs who have the talent to use it in odd ways. This leaves us with a dilemma. Even though invigoration couldn't help me uncovering the crystal's secrets, it allowed me to sense the marking liquid this so-called master applied to the crystal. This means I have to choose if to cut the magic gemstone into smaller parts and use it for my creations, or to keep it as it is to learn about the orc's way with the crystals. The two things are mutually exclusive. If I cut the gemstone, I'll also destroy the markings in the process. I don't think it's much of a dilemma. Solus replied, even if you manage to successfully cut the crystal, there's nothing we can use it for. Violet magic crystals are too rare to waste them on trivial enchanted items. It has to be a masterpiece. Even if we had the materials to make one, going public with a new weapon empowered by violet crystals right after the orc accident would be like putting a target on your chest, back, and nether regions. We have to let things calm down before doing anything. So, until we really need it to craft an artifact, let's keep it as it is. Agreed. Lith nodded with a sigh, adding the violet crystal to his collection of precious but still useless things. It consisted of the Dryad's gifts, the various corpses he collected over the years, and the weapons he robbed from his opponents. I wish this was a video game. A timely chain quest would pop up and give me what I need the moment I need it. The Darwin had proven to be a nasty client. To shield its user from detection techniques, it required to cover them entirely. It was very hard, but also brittle, making it easy to crack. That was the reason why the shell protecting the rockworm was so rough. A more precise refining process would most likely cause it to shatter. It would also require a very powerful magic. Being the Darwin resistant to magic, even analyzing it had been a hassle. The best use I can find for it is to turn Darwin into fine dust and then coat some kind of ninja suit with it. I could save it for stealth missions since it's useless in battle. If only I could enchant it to improve its performances. Not even the master could, so I think it's better to bide our time and not waste the Darwin on a pet project either. Solus really wanted to cheer him up, but didn't know what to say. Even though he could now return home more often, leaving his family again made Lith sad. During his past life, the only thing he had ever wanted was to be a good brother to Carl and a good uncle to his brother's children. Now he finally had the opportunity to live his dream, yet he had to leave it behind to pursue his new goals. If I take a break now, I'll no longer be the kingdom's golden boy, he thought. Now it's my best chance to access all the libraries and databases that back when I was just a commoner were forbidden to me. With the association backing me and a badge from the army, there shouldn't be much outside my grasp. Lith warped back inside his room. Aaron and Lyria were waiting for him right behind his door, knocking on it with their little hands. "What are you doing up this early?" Lith asked them while pinching his nose to keep a headache at bay. All that noise was making him cranky. Mostly because he hadn't slept in a week, plus studying the Darwin had required multiple uses of invigoration in a row. "Are you really leaving today, Uncle Lith?" Lyria asked, staring at him with her big, puppy, chestnut eyes. "Yes, right after breakfast." It was already the morning of the third day. He was expected to get back before lunchtime, which still left him a few hours. A wave of Lith's hand made plates and cutlery float on the table, while steaming hot food came out his pocket dimension. The whole family was reunited for his return. Even Tista had interrupted her travels to meet her big brother. "Can't you stay here one more day? Pretty please." How Aaron had managed to have blue eyes was a mystery to Lith. Both the kids were beautiful and healthy. They would rarely get sick. Lith wondered if it depended on their parents having received his special treatment. Lyria had blonde hair with shades of black, just like her mother Rena, while Aaron had the family trademark dark brown hair. They were both so small Lith could easily keep them on his lap at the same time. "No, I can't. I'm really sorry," Lith replied. He then snapped his fingers, producing with air magic a jingling sound to alert the rest of the family that the meal was ready. "I'll return as soon as I can. In the meantime, I prepared a present for you." Lith gave them what looked like a remember each. It was an egg-shaped recording device, used to capture important moments in the lives of those rich enough to afford them. The ones Lith had forge mastered, instead of projecting real events, were able to replay the kids' favorite fairy tale. Aaron's was the adventure of Forge Master Lith Jones and the Last Crucible. Lyria preferred the story of battle mage Solus Van Helsing, the kick-ass vampire slayer. "You should have given them the projector just before your departure." Rena scolded him. "The food will become cold before they get tired of it." "It's unlikely." Lith shrugged. "The magic crystal I used only allows for one use every few hours. It will teach them moderation." The children's happiness was as big as their disappointment when the projector finished its tale and refused to play it again. After the breakfast ended, Lith hugged every member of his family before taking his leave. "Take care, little brother," Rena said. "Always remember that no matter how many bad things you'll see out there, this house will always be the place you belong to. If you ever need our support, you'll find us here. Do whatever you need to return home safe." Raz whispered in Lith's ear, "Your mother can't bear to lose another son." Lith didn't understand his father's words until Alina asked him to bend down to caress his face. "I know it's stupid of me after all these years, but if you ever meet Tryon, tell him to come home. I just need to know he is all right." Her voice was almost broken. Is she really afraid that I'll disappear too? The pain in Alina's words shocked Lith. The moment he left home, his communication device appeared in his hand, and Lith started to call in some favors. He arrived at the boot camp early, with plenty of time left to change into his uniform and make final preparations. Chapter 367. When the mail arrived, everyone rushed to open their own envelope to discover their final scores. Most rejoiced, but some cried in despair. Among the girls, only Nilo had been evaluated fit to become a soldier. The other two and Lywell were forced to choose between becoming members of the administrative department or return to their civilian life. The rest of the unit had received a passing grade. Vipley and Nilo were the only ones promoted to non-commissioned officers. Nobody was surprised when Lith's grade was confirmed to be an M. What unsettled him was that, while for the others it was required to report to Sergeant Tepper, Lith had been summoned to Commander Berrien's office. Aside from his score, the letter didn't report any further detail. "Don't worry. I'm sure there's a good reason for this." Vipley tried to reassure Lith. "It would make no sense making me an NCO and keeping you as a private." "Thanks. I hope you're all right." Lith patted Vipley's shoulder before going to the commander's office. "If I have to spend a year and a half starting from scratch, I might as well quit, and they know it." Lith thought, what could have gone wrong? Did I fail the psychological evaluation? Either that, or I'm being punished for the crystal's disappearance. I can't think of any other reason to kick me out with such an underhanded ruse. Lith's paranoia once again took the wheel, painting himself into a corner before he could even reach Berrien's door. "Welcome, Mage Verhen. I didn't expect you so soon." The commander's polite manners didn't surprise Lith. If he knows my family name, then he probably wants to avoid me making a scene. He thought. Commander Baryon was a man in his early 30s. He was almost as tall as Lith, standing 1.8, 5 feet 11 inches, meters tall with pitch black hair and eyes. His pale blue uniform could barely contain his muscular body, giving each of his movements an impression of strength. Lith gave him a salute, which the commander returned before inviting him to sit down. Let's get straight to the point, Mage Verhen. Lith didn't like the commander's flat tone, nor the fact Baryon kept referring to him as a civilian mage. You are an outstanding individual. Alas, you are far from perfect. Your performances are controversial at best. You didn't develop any kind of bond with the members of your unit, nor with your commanding officer. The commander handed Lith several complaints about him filed by the other cadets, and even by Tepper during the past months. I should have let them die in those woods. Lith inwardly thought in outrage. Your psychological evaluation says you are emotionally detached and manipulative. In the light of all the circumstances presented to me, I can't make you an officer. You are unfit to lead even a small unit. Lith gritted his teeth, waiting for the final blow. At the same time, you have broken every record of this and many other camps. You also risked your life to save your unit when you could have just run away. No one would have blamed you for leaving them for dead in such an impossible situation. Your bravery earned you gratitude, admiration, and provided the Army with plenty of materials for our R&D department. This time the commander handed to Lith commendation letters from the sergeant and his peers, asking Baryon to ignore their previous complaints. This is why I'm promoting you to first lieutenant. I thought you said I'm unfit to lead. The sudden turn of events left Lith in a daze. You sure are. Yet without a proper rank, you wouldn't even get a proper meal, let alone the clearance level necessary for the jobs I've been allowed to offer you. The commander steepled his fingers. Based on your evaluation, you're a perfect candidate for our secret services. I won't lie to you. It's a very hard job and a lifelong one at that. If you decide to accept, there will be no option for retirement or quitting. The only way out is feet first. Black Ops Squad, Lith thought. No way. I would be constantly monitored, either by enemies or allies, and would have no freedom of movement. The Army is a tool for my ends, not the other way around. I'm honored, but I have to refuse, sir. I don't think such a job would allow me to pursue my magical research, nor to have a family of my own. Lith lied through his teeth. He would rather die than marry and have children. Baryon nodded without showing one bit of surprise. Always the family man, just like his file reported. The commander inwardly sighed. It was worth a shot. Then I'm sorry to say that the only positions available to you are as a member of the Knights Guard or the Rangers. My hands are tied. Lith knew everything about the Knights Guard. Floria had talked about her father's unit until Lith's ears bleed. Solving crimes and protecting royal constables wasn't an alluring job. Lith would rather work for the Mage Association instead of being ordered about all day long for the rest of his life. Tell me more about the Rangers. Lith replied, making Baryon smirk for a split second. The Rangers are an elite force, entrusted with great powers and responsibilities. Don't let the name fool you. It has nothing to do with hunting game or patrolling borders. Their duty is to travel through the kingdom, to protect isolated communities from all kinds of threats, and to keep in check the monster's population. If you accept, you'll be assigned a vast area that you'll need to know like the back of your hand. If nobles abuse their authority in rural areas, where there are no mages or army members, your duty will be to uphold the law. If monsters infest a region, you'll have to get rid of them before they can swarm a populated area. Also, there are lots of no-man's lands, where people settle in without paying their due taxes to the kingdom or even respecting its laws. If you find such villages, they can only be offered two choices: to submit or die. Organized crime is already a plague. The last thing we need is a criminal country inside of the country. Would it be the same region until the end of my service? Lith asked, no matter how big an area was. Once he finished exploring it, Lith would turn into nothing more than a babysitter. No, it would change after 2 or 3 months. Elite doesn't mean immune to bribery. Nobody watches the watchers, so they have to be rotated. Depending on how fast you work, you may even have free time. Rangers are allowed to go home and use warp gates, but their job is subject to scrutiny. I think Ranger would be the most suitable position for me, sir. Are you sure? Varian still needed to give Lith the final details. It's a very vexing duty. Since they have access to communication amulets, magic, and warp gates, Rangers act alone, unless they deem reinforcements are required. Prolonged isolation can take a huge toll on the mind. Lith inwardly smiled at those words. With Solus by my side, I'm never truly alone. No partner also means no witness. I can do what I want, take whatever I want, and nobody would ever know. Affirmative, sir. Before starting active duty, I need your help with one thing. Chapter 368. Regaros City's Region Boot Camp. The cadets' graduation ceremony was an event celebrated not only by the new members of the Griffin Kingdom's army, but also by their commanding officers. Finding diamonds in the rough and helping promising recruits to overcome their limitations was one of the most common ways for a drill sergeant to rack up merits. The success or failure of their cadets could change their careers. Tryon Proudstar was still recovering from his clash with Floria Ernest. She had kept her word. Neither she nor her family had made a move against him, but the army wasn't as forgiving. Floria was considered one of the most outstanding young officers. She had yet to fail an important mission, and most of the soldiers she trained had become members of elite units. Back when she was still a cadet, Tryon had done everything he could to make her flunk. Now that their roles were reversed, every success Floria achieved made him the object of harsh reprimands and contemptuous looks. To his superiors, Tryon had failed to recognize her value. The more she rose in the ranks, the bigger the stain on his personal file became. Tryon's only source of relief was the camaraderie from his fellow sergeants. They knew about his brother and understood his grief. Most of them came from messed-up families, and each had their own burden. Making a stupid mistake wasn't an issue. As long as Tryon was willing to learn from it, he would have their full support. The end of the semester also meant that they could finally relax and enjoy a slow meal. The mess hall was filled with voices telling the most ridiculous anecdotes about their own cadets. Spring recruits were considered the worst batch, since it usually consisted of nobles or lazy youth that had no idea what to do with their lives. This cadet I had, Revkin, he was really a piece of work. Tryon was bantering about his latest success. Rough and undisciplined, but a real soldier to the core. The harder you taught him, the faster he learned. He was about to tell his friends about how he had recommended Revkin for the rank of Lance Corporal, when an eerie feeling crawled up his skin. It was almost the end of the summer, so the climate was still hot, yet Tryon felt a knot in his stomach. It was a sensation he had never forgotten, like the cold drafts that plagued his room during winter when he was still a kid. "Why suddenly so silent?" asked Beligros, one of Tryon's closest friends, when he saw him anxiously look at the mess hall's entrance. The answer walked through the door just a few seconds later, donning the deep green of the Rangers and the rank of first lieutenant on his sleeves. "By the Great Mother," more than one voice said while he passed in front of their tables. Most drill sergeants checked Lith out, envying whoever had been lucky enough to be his commanding officer. Everything about how he moved and wore the uniform told them he had just graduated. Cooking up an officer right off a cadet was usually a career-maker event. Some of the female sergeants checked him out for less noble reasons. It had taken Lith quite an effort to find Tryon in the myriad of boot camps across the whole Griffin Kingdom. To get access to the right one without an official reason had cost him owing some favors. There wasn't much his connections could do. Lith's influence outside the Distar Marquis was almost none, yet it was a price he was happy to pay for his mother's sake. He had never realized how much suffering Tryon's absence had caused Alina. Otherwise, he would have hunted his brother down years ago. "Sergeants," Lith said as he gave them a salute after reaching Tryon's table. It was unusual for an officer to salute NCOs first, but being freshly promoted, Lith was paying them the respect their rank and seniority deserved. All of Tryon's friends were pleasantly impressed by the courtesy the giant was showing them, so they stood up and returned the salute. All but Tryon. His knees felt weak as the knot in his stomach was quickly moving up to his throat. The scene in front of him was right out of his worst nightmare. "What are you doing here?" Tryon asked, using sheer willpower to look into Litha's eyes as he braced for the impact. "We need to talk." Litha's gaze wasn't angry nor menacing. His tone was flat, like he was just asking for directions in an unknown city. "What are you doing, man?" Beligros whispered while trying to pull Tryon up. "He may be as green inside as he is outside, but he's still a superior officer, and yours is a clear act of insubordination." Tryon wanted to reply, but his jaw was clenched so hard he couldn't speak. Then, the nightmare became reality. No need for formalities, Sergeant Beligros. After all, Tryon and I are brothers. The whole mess hall stood up at those words, while Beligros turned pale, knowing his disrespectful words had been heard. "Damn it, I was just trying to make Tryon move. Hope this guy doesn't hold a grudge," he thought. "What do you want?" Tryon replied with a hoarse voice. Whatever it was, he wanted for it to end quickly. He could almost hear the thoughts of all his peers, making cruel comparisons between the two brothers. Lith was the tallest man in the room with his 1.83, 6 foot, while Tryon barely reached the average height of 1.65, 5 feet 5 inches. To make things worse, he wasn't a scrawny kid anymore. Lith had the build one would expect from a veteran of an elite unit, not from a recruit. Also, both his rank straight after the graduation and him being part of the Rangers were big tells for all those present. They meant he was a mage. Otherwise, no matter how talented a cadet was, being promoted above the rank of corporal right after a boot camp was impossible. "It's about our mother. She still worries about you. Do you mind telling me why in 2 years and a half you never bothered returning home, or at least writing a letter?" The room fell silent. Lith was different from how Tryon had pictured him. Tryon had always told them that his family had abandoned him, so hearing about a worried mother was mind-blowing news. "Do you really want me to believe that she cares for me? After ignoring me for years, giving all her love and attention to her little, perfect son?" Tryon's words oozed poison. "Look, I know we never went along." Lith sighed, yet his brother's accusations left him unfazed. He didn't care for Tryon's grievances. For all those years, he had believed him dead. What sort of world is it where you can't even trust assassins? During the plague, they threatened me to kill him unless I surrendered, yet here we are. Neither of us deserves a mother like Alina, and you know it. Don't let your feelings towards me cloud your judgment. She deserves better. Chapter 369. Is it true? Tryon asked. Yes, she's really worried about you. Mom just wants to know that you are. Not that. Tryon stood up, lashing out the insecurities that he had left festering in the last 6 months. Is what that Ernest wench told me true? That everyone has forgotten about me? That I now have a niece and a little brother? That both of them were named after you? Lith needed a split second to understand who the Ernest wench was. A drill sergeant couldn't get close to Journey unless she was investigating them, which left Floria as the only possible answer. Lith clenched his fist, yet his tone remained polite. Rena stopped considering you a brother after you never returned from your graduation. She couldn't forgive you for making Mom cry like that. Tista wrote you off the family list ever since you and Orpal said all those things about her. As for Dad, he never talks about you. I don't think he hates you, Tryon. More like he has lost all hopes. We do have a niece, Lyria, and a little brother, Aaron. Lyria is the only one named after me. On Mogar, it was custom to name a child with the same initial letter of the most esteemed member of the family as a good omen. Well, I guess it had to be expected. A humble sergeant is no match for an almighty magician. Tryon's anger almost drove him insane, to the point he barely realized he was discussing family matters in public. I can't believe Rena sucked up to you that much. What did you give her in exchange for it? Nothing. Litha's voice was losing its kindness and becoming colder by the word. She did it because I gave her a home. I protected both her old and new family, and because I delivered her firstborn. No one knew you became a sergeant, simply because you never bothered telling us. You are done talking. Lith cut him short, throwing his communication amulet on the table. Either you promise me in front of all these people that you will come back home, or I'll call her mother right now, and you'll explain to her your reasons. Tryon and all those present looked at the amulet with greed. Such an enchanted item was worth a year of their pay. Tryon hesitated for a second. If he called Alina and she started crying, his reputation would be destroyed. He had always pictured her to his colleagues as a cold-hearted woman who had eyes only for her most talented child. Tryon knew it was a blatant lie. He said it for the same reason he had never returned home. It was the way he had found to get back at a family from which he had always felt left out. Tryon hoped to make them feel guilty and worried about his disappearance. Most of all, he wanted to hurt Lith. It was clear he had failed. Lith still looked at him as when they were still kids. Lith had taught to his older brothers that the flip side of love wasn't hate. It was indifference. Even when he was little, he would stare at them without really seeing neither Orpal or Tryon. Lith would talk to his brothers with the same tone he used for strangers. Be it pelts or meat, he would never bring anything for them. Whenever they were hurt or ill, Lith never intervened unless their parents asked him to. I'll go back home as soon as I get a leave. You have my word. Good. Lith nodded. One word of advice before our business is concluded. Our parents love you, so I won't meddle with your relationship. Same for Tista and Rena. They are grown-up women who can fend for themselves. Lith stepped forward as his eyes changed from chestnut to yellow, and his pupils were replaced by a red light. The children, however, are another story. If when I get back I find out you have been anything but a loving uncle and brother, I will end you. Lith remarked his last words by letting out a sliver of killing intent. Or at least that was the intention. He was already tired and cranky before Tryon started to insult everyone Lith cared about, so the sliver turned into a flood. The mess hall's lights flickered several times as an unnatural shadow covered the windows, making everyone present think they had dozed off into a lucid nightmare. In the darkness, they saw distorted reflections of themselves staring at them with hunger. Some even experienced their ghastly touch. The sergeants were all veterans, yet they found themselves covered in cold sweat and with their weapons at hand. They were pointed against their imaginary enemies, except for those of Tryon's friends which were aimed at Lith. At ease, sergeants. Lith snapped his fingers, using both gravity and spirit magic to force them to lower their blades. Or does that mean you are assaulting an officer? At those words, the weapons were either stored inside a dimensional item again or let go onto the ground. Lith spent the rest of the afternoon back at his base. Commander Berrien had let him choose his first destination. Lith cross-referenced the information he had collected from the Army's database with those from the Mage Association. Aside from necromancy, there's not much about the study of the nature of souls and how to manipulate them, but it's a start nonetheless. Lith thought, too bad neither my merits nor my clearance level grants me access to most of the tomes I'm interested in. Lith collected all the lore and legends about the regions he could choose from before leaving the base. Commander Berrien granted me a full day of leave to solve the matter with Tryon and make my decision. I'll use this time to go meet Calla one last time before leaving. With all her connections with the undead community, she could give me advice about where to start my research. I could also ask her help to develop an undead empty shell for Solus. 2 birds with 1 stone. Lith took out from the pocket dimension his communication amulet. The last time they met, the White had warned him she would be busy with her experiments to attain lichhood and asked Lith to not reach for her unless he was in dire need for help. Calla's rune was lit, hence her amulet wasn't inside a dimensional item. Yet she didn't reply, if not after several attempts. Sorry to bother you, Calla, Lith said when the channel was finally open. I just need a few minutes of your time, then I'll leave you alone. A few minutes might be all the time I have left, Scourge. Her voice was barely a whisper. I've been trying to contact you for months. My experiments. I'm afraid my most recent failure will also be my last. If you manage to reach my lair before it's too late, I'll help you to the best of my possibilities. I can't make any promises. Those be starts. Lith cursed at the army clerks. While I attended the boot camp, they didn't reply to any call aside those from my family and noble friends. The only silver lining in that situation was that Calla lived in the forest outside the White Griffin. Thanks to the camp's warp gate, Lith could reach her in less than a minute. The only problem was that he was already months late. Chapter 370. Lith hadn't seen Calla during the last 3 years, They just talked from time to time when her communication amulet appeared online. Lith understood how difficult the process of safely splitting one's core was, and he thought that endangering his friend's life just for a social visit was beyond idiotic. Once he reached the White Griffin, Lith asked the headmaster to have his teacher ring back. He didn't have the time to fly around the forest searching for Kala. Albeit short, his meeting with Marth provided him some vital information. I never met Kala the White after Balkir's attack. I honestly believe she had died by the hand of a Valor. Marth replied when Lith asked him about Kala's whereabouts. I would love to contact Scarlet, but she left the White Griffin for good. We have a new Lord of the Forest, Centaur the Thunderbird. That's why Kala needed my help. Lith thought, with Scarlet gone, there is no Elder Awakened One that could cure her. Light magic, it's one of the hardest elements to master. Centaur had conflicting feelings about both Kala and Lith. The former she considered an undead, which made Centaur reluctant to even stand in her presence. The latter had the stigma of Scarlet considering him a possible threat. Yet Centaur remembered how her former leader had considered Kala a close friend, as well as how much Mrook and Protector liked Lith. She brought him to the White's quarters without asking questions. When Kala had mentioned a lair, Lith's mind had pictured some sort of natural network of caves, maybe a dungeon, a place riddled with corpses and undead, respectively the failures and successes of her research. The entrance was an arch made of stone that led to an underground passage. It was the only part Lith had imagined right. The moment he stepped inside, he thought to have entered a penthouse back on Earth. The room looked like an antechamber realized to allow evolved monsters to move without having to shapeshift. Everything was oversized, from the corridors leading to the other rooms to the over 4 meters, 13-foot, high ceiling. The floor was smooth, with no imperfection nor stain visible. This isn't a natural cave at all. Someone carved everything out with earth magic. Lith thought in surprise. Thank the gods you're here. A giant mass of brown fur charged at Lith like a truck. Lith wasn't scared. He had recognized Nock's voice. The moment the BYK hit him, Lith realized how wrong he was. Even with Nock's momentum, the impact was too weak. The fur was full of white streaks, and now that they were close enough, Lith noticed several bald spots. Follow me. Nock bit Lith's left sleeve, tugging him forward without even waiting for a reply. Lith exploited that contact to use invigoration. Nock was now an adult BYK. His huge build was proof he had at least inherited his mother's physical strength and of how well fed he had been. What the heck has happened to him? I can't find any trace of disease or injury on Nock, yet his life force is as weak as when he was just a cub. Did he suffer from Kala's experiments too, or what? Lith thought. They passed through a series of rooms. Each one was bigger than Lith's house and filled with state-of-the-art equipment for all kinds of magical research. There wasn't a single inch in any room that wasn't filled with books or magical protections to prevent a failed experiment from causing a cave-in. The alchemy and forge master labs almost made Lith turn green with envy. Where did Kala find the money to afford all of this stuff? I thought she was interested in necromancy, not crafting arts. Solus jotted down everything they had seen, hoping to recreate most of the machinery once she reverted to her tower form. Some devices were an improved version of what she was used to seeing in the White Griffin's departments. When they reached their destination, Lith had no doubt it was a necromancer's lab. Several glass tubes were lined up against the walls. Each one held a corpse floating into a translucent, preserving liquid. The floor and the ceiling were covered with magic circles similar to those Lith had found during his own research about souls in the army database. They had been carved in the stone with darkness magic. Their purpose was to prevent the mystical energies from dispersing. In a way, necromancy was similar to forge mastering. Creating higher undead required a lot of mana, and each corpse could only be used once. The magic circles increased the odds of success by saturating the atmosphere of darkness energy, making it easier for it to condense into a stable blood core. Kala lied in the middle of one of the oddest circles Lith had ever seen. Her body was lying still on the floor with most of her bones and muscles exposed. Her evolved monster form was partially undead, so she had no need to breathe. The small shroud of darkness that covered part of her skull and abdomen proved she was still alive. Lith rushed to Kala's side, noticing that one of her eye sockets was empty. Only the one still covered by the darkness was lit by the red light of undeath. So you managed to arrive on time. Kala noticed Litha's presence thanks to his smell. She was running on fumes. The sight was the first thing she had lost days ago. Don't talk. Save your strength, and let me see if there's something I can do. Lith used invigoration on her and discovered an unsettling anomaly. Just like Nock, her body was fit as a fiddle, yet her life force was fading away as they spoke. I stand corrected. Tell me what happened here, otherwise you'll die healthy. There's not much to say, Kala replied. I had reached the final steps of my research. My body is now able to withstand massive amounts of darkness energy without being destroyed, and my mana core has been freed from its cage. All that was left was to split it into two perfect halves and store one into a magic crystal I prepare beforehand. It took me months to adjust its wavelength to match the one of my core. The trickiest part was... What happened? Lith cut her short. The splitting of the mana core was a complete success. Alas, the removing part couldn't have gone worse. I underestimated the task and paid the price. I believed that becoming a lich was just like any other greater necromancy spell. The magic circles I prepared are perfect to contain darkness magic, but are otherwise useless. The moment I brought one of the two new cores outside my body, it disappeared like smoke, leaving behind only its darkness component. It forcefully attempted to fuse back with the remaining half of my mana core, but it was already in a critical condition. To trigger the split, I exposed both my body and core to tremendous stress. The sudden imbalance almost killed me. From that moment, I grew weaker by the day. I tried all the light spells I know to no avail. Chapter 371. Even invigoration is useless. Healing magic repair my body, but every bit of energy I spend is lost forever. The only reason I survived this long is that I modified one of the circles in a last-ditch effort. Now it's supposed to hold all kinds of energies, but it is a poor job. I didn't know what's wrong with me, so I had to make it a makeshift jack of all trades. Okay, now unless you have something medically relevant to say, shut up and let me think. Lith replied, Sorry, it's just that after being alone for so long, talking to someone that can understand my research. Mom, what part of shut up you didn't understand? The shut or the up? Nock scolded her. Kala's eye glowed in silent annoyance. Lith had no idea what to do, so he used his diagnostic spells first and used invigoration later. Once again, according to his magic, aside from being on the verge of death, Kala was fit as a fiddle. This doesn't make sense. It sounds like one of those the procedure was a success, but the patient died jokes. Lith thought, I have one last card to play. Lith then used the scanner spell. It was the fulcrum of Tier 5 healing magic, the art of perceiving and manipulating all kinds of life forces. He had already turned it into true magic, but had failed to find a way to integrate it with invigoration. Unlike invigoration, Scanner revealed to Lith in what pitiful state Kala was. Her life force had stopped flowing. For some reason, Kala's body was unable to replenish its strength or assimilate any kind of external energy. Even when Lith attempted to share with her part of his life force, it did her no good. She was dying because her own body was slowly consuming itself in order to survive. Her abdomen was what worried him the most. A small portion of it was completely black. Scanner was unable to sense any life force coming from it, but that was supposed to be impossible. Invigoration confirmed the initial evaluation. There was nothing wrong with her physical condition. A second scanner also produced consistent results. Kala's body was starving and part of it was already dead. It was the first time that Lith's trump cards were at odds with one another. Why couldn't it be something simpler, like waxing a gorilla or teaching a crab how to give a finger? Lith thought for long about the problem, but neither he or Solus were able to find a solution. Did you get caught in the aftermath of the experiment too? He asked Nock. Since their conditions were similar, maybe the BYK could be able to provide him more clues. What gave you such an idea? You look like crap. Lith replied. How tactful of you. Solus sneered. His mother is dying. You could at least be gentle. I have no time for niceties. I need answers and I need them now. Oh, this. Nock stood on his hind legs while looking at his battered fur. This is no one's fault. Since Mom got injured, I had no time for hunting, so I have skipped a few meals. My sis, too, refused to leave her side. Her hunger is worse than mine because if she doesn't eat, she doesn't get thinner. She dies. Nock pointed his snout to a pile of dirty rags lying in a corner. It was a sour note in the otherwise pristine room. You sister. Lith had forgotten about Kala's vampire daughter. Lith, this is Nika. Nika Lith. He is an old friend of mine. The dirty rags stood up, turning out to be a woman in her mid-20s. Dust and mud covered most of her naked body. Her hair was disheveled, making it look like a mop too old to be still of use. Her skin was white as milk, and so were her eyes. They had no pupil or iris, yet Lith could feel her staring at him. Why is she naked? Lith asked. Because beasts do not care if I wear clothes and humans try to kill me no matter my attire. Her voice was raspy like she had a sore throat. Her body was flaccid and her hair white with a tinge of yellow. Compared to her, Nana looked like she was in her prime. Lith was disappointed. Vampires looked nothing like he expected them. Nika reminded him of one of the witches from the Macbeth play. Can you please feed her, Scourge? Kala asked. With invigoration, you can get your life force back, while if Nock weakens any further, his core could suffer permanent damage. Lith took out a lot of food from his pocket dimension, allowing the BYK to feast to its stomach content for the first time in weeks. Well, yes, but actually no. Lith replied. I haven't slept in a week, and during the last 2 days, I was busy with experiments. If I feed her, I might not have enough energy left to heal you. If I understand the underlying cause of Kala's sickness, of course. You and your experiments. Solus scolded him. How many times have I told you to sleep? Once every 2 days. Do you have any idea how much time I would have wasted that way? I understand. Kala interrupted their telepathic quarreling. I've lost track of the time so often that my children... Mom, shut up. Both Nock and Nika yelled as one. Lith checked Nock's condition with invigoration and was happy to see his body regaining its strength. What could have possibly happened to make even invigoration useless? Why does the life force that I give Kala go to waste? Lith kept wondering while he alternated the use of his breathing technique and scanner. Maybe it's just a coincidence, Solus pointed out. But don't you think it's odd that the black area scanner detects is partially overlapped with the one where invigoration locates Kala's core? It's no coincidence, just idiocy. Lith replied. Whose idiocy? Mine. Lith inwardly cursed at himself. I know what's happening. He explained to Kala. To split and move your mana core, you have destroyed its cage. Said cage is your own life force. It makes sense. Both success and failure require for me to die. My survival has been an unexpected accident. Kala pondered. The damage you have caused has permanently altered the flow of your life force, making it unable to connect properly with the mana core. That's why invigoration is useless. The world energy has no way of being passed to your body anymore. Can you fix it? Mother and children asked in unison. If I was at full strength, I'd answer probably. In my current condition, I don't even know how long will it take for me to collapse from exhaustion. Repairing such huge damage near the mana core is a very delicate job. Can you hold on for a couple of hours? I think I have another couple of minutes in me. The shadows enveloping Kala's figure shrank, while the light in her remaining eyes started to flicker. Chapter 372. Cursing at both the army and his bad luck, Lith activated all of his body, sculpting spells at once. He had modified the basic version learned at the academy into a true magic one, with a few kinks of his own. The situation is bad. I have to alternate invigoration and scanner, otherwise one's readings will block the others. Plus I have to fill the hole inside Kala's abdomen fast. If I take my time as usual, she's as good as dead. In her attempt to achieve lichhood, Kala had damaged her life force, leaving a gaping hole that was slowly dissipating both her mana and life force. It also prevented her to use invigoration since the mana would be drained by the hole. Lith went all out from the start and conjured 10 chisels at once. The chisels started to probe into the healthy life force. Kala wasn't a slime, but an evolved monster, which made her a unique living being. If she was a human, at least I'd know where to start. I have never studied a white's life force, damn it. It's completely different from what I have ever seen before. Watching a Kala through scanner was like trying to follow a roller coaster, constantly changing its physical form, going from liquid to solid without warning. Her partial undead nature made unnecessary for her to breathe or possess most organs. On paper, it sounded really cool because it made her resistant to most kinds of energies. On the other hand, for Lith, it was a nightmare. Her life force was a hybrid, composed of the physical form of her body and the shadow energy that enveloped her physique to connect the various parts. Lith had to alter them both without killing her, nor having enough time to study Kala's unique nature properly. Even though Lith was in a rush, he needed to assess how bad the situation was, so he had the chisels checking the edges of the black zone. The situation is worse than I expected. Lith sighed. The life force around the damage has stabilized, but even just poking it's enough to make it bleed life force that disappears immediately. I can't collect nor save it. The hole is like a drain. Solus, I may need your help. There is not much I can do with a deep green core. I can barely use a tier 5 spell by borrowing some of your mana. She replied, Don't worry, I just need you to use spatula to collect the life force in case I make a mistake. Lith could have conjured and controlled more than 10 chisels, but that would lessen his accuracy. Kala was already with 1 foot in the grave. He couldn't afford to make any major slip-up. Manipulating life force was different from any other kind of spellcasting Lith had learned. It required to keep your focus at all times, exerting surgical control on your mana as well as on the patient's body. In any other circumstance, Lith would have used body sculpting to repair the damage by redistributing the life force without altering its flow. The problem was that the procedure was slow and Kala had maybe a couple of minutes left. Since I don't have time, the fastest approach is to transplant life force from a healthy part to fill the hole. It will create a new one, but at least if I cover Kala's mana core, her condition should improve. If I'm right, it will buy me the time I need to fix her. First, Lith used one of his personal spells, Mold, to take a magical picture of the life force in Kala's left paw in order to be able to restore it later once the emergency was resolved. A paw was far from all vital organs, making it the perfect life force donor. After he made sure that no permanent damage would befall his friend, the chisels worked in unison on the left paw to remove the energy and brought it over the black area. Even transplanting the life force of the same individual was a very delicate procedure. First, a chisel had to disconnect each single block unit's connection to the paw. Then, a few chisels would use mana strands to weave it to the healthy life force near the hole. Lith had to be fast, otherwise the dead zone would drain the energy. Lith hated that kind of procedure. It was more like butchering than surgery, so he also had to focus on minimizing the damages. For a control freak like him, it was a worst-case scenario. He could either rush things, maybe saving the patient, but leaving a mess behind that he would be forced to fix later, or bide his time and let Kala die. Lith worked non-stop, expending his mana so fast that he needed to use invigoration right after the 2 minutes mark had passed. Despite the situation, he sighed in relief. Since Kala is still alive, I count that as a win. Lith thought. The light in her left I seemed to have stabilized, but she was still too weak to talk, or simply she had no energy to waste. Kala could feel that something was wrong with her paw. She was progressively losing sensitivity, yet she already had a hard time staying awake, so she considered it just another sign of her imminent doom. The more time passed, though, the stronger she felt. Kala understood that whatever Lith was doing was working the moment she regained her sight. She had been blinded for weeks, so her first instinct was to scream in joy. Yet when she saw how bad her children's condition was, her joy turned into despair. The only thing that stopped her from trying to reach them was the sight of Lith sweating bullets, who emitted enough mana to fight 3 whites at once. He was sparing no effort, going down to the last shred of energy before using invigoration. I don't want to lose another friend. Kala and I never spoke much, but there's a connection between us. Maybe it's because we are both anomalies for our species, but she always gave me more credit than I deserved. Lith thought, I'm glad to hear that, but promise me this time it will not end like with Protector. Solus was worried about him. Both his body and mind were approaching their limits. I promise. Lith replied, leaving her shocked. She knew how stubborn he was. I have learned my lesson back then. Exchanging my life for another is idiotic, but that doesn't mean that I will not do my best to save Kala. He emitted a strong burst of energy, sending his chisels after the shadow energy that composed half of the life force. Operating on the space near the hole was already hard. The slightest mistake would result in a partial or complete loss of the transplanted energy. Yet what he was about to do was even harder. Lith had done all he could for the body. Now he needed to restore the flow. To do it, he had to attach small chunks of life force to the shadows and reconnect them to the damaged parts. Weaving mana threads on a moving target was as easy as killing an elephant with a pea shooter. Chapter 373. It required for Lith to anticipate the life force's flow, so he could place the energy on its tracks and connect the threads a second earlier they collided. There was no space for mistakes. Each procedure could only be a success or a failure. So far, he had failed a lot. The hole in Kala's abdomen was the size of a human head, while her paw had enough life force to fill a space 10 times as big. Yet it was already almost depleted. To use what little energy was left, Lith used invigoration before every attempt to fix the flow. It increased his odds of success at the expense of his endurance. With each use of invigoration, the smaller was the effect and the higher the burden on Lith's body. Each burst allowed him to use his full focus as he had just woken up from a good night's sleep and to deplete his mana without worries. Soon he started bleeding from his nose, then from the ears, and lastly from his eyes. The body sculpting surgery lasted a little less than 5 minutes. The final result was a crude patchwork filling the hole, while Kala's paw was pretty much crippled. As for Lith, he collapsed onto the ground with the same grace of a rock. The hit was strong enough to worsen his condition. The bleeding continued, forming a small pool of blood beneath his face. I wonder what he did to me. Kala pondered. She was feeling better by the second, but it didn't mean much. It was just that anything was better than her previous near-death experience. Her abdomen felt like someone was stirring her bowels with a rusty razor, while her left paw remained limp, no matter how much she attempted to move it. It was paralyzed, yet searing pain radiated from it. Hey, my old friend, you are the only true constant of life. She sighed. I will not miss you once I ascend to the status of true undead. You are as clingy as annoying. Mom, not cut her monologue short. There's no time for your monologues. Nika has lost it. Damned isolation. It seems I can't keep my mouth shut. Kala said, while turning around. Nika was on all four, near Lith's head, licking from the pool of blood. After the first taste, she shivered in pleasure, and the feeding frenzy overwhelmed her. She had never tasted anything so delicious. All the food she had previously eaten seemed to be rotten trash compared to that nectar. She drank the blood, emitting slurping sounds, yet careful to not miss even a single drop. Nika, stop immediately, Kala ordered while trying to get near her daughter. Her left paw refused to move, so she could only drag it on the floor while moving forward. Nika had already drained the pool, so she took Lith's head on her lap, caressing his jugular like they were long-lost lovers. Her body had partially recovered from its starvation. The skin was no more flaccid, the wrinkles had disappeared. Her full lips were of a deep red color, but it lasted only for a second before the blood covering them was drained and they returned to be milky white. A vampire had several ways of absorbing nourishment. One was with darkness magic, but it was as tasty as airplane food, so it was kept either as a last resort or as a combat option. Another was through the skin. Some of them bathed in blood, gaining from its strength, and the same relaxation coming from a full day of SBA. One of the two most favored methods was drinking it because it gave them pleasure. I just want some more. Nika replied, turning her fingers into claws and pricking on Litha's neck with them. Her eyes were now full black, the sign that her mind was overpowered by her hunger. Suri, cease. Nock charged at her like ram, yet Nika swatted him away like he was a fly, sending the BYK crashing against the south wall. Nock was just a magical beast. His strength and weight were meaningless in front of a higher undead. Damn it, Kala thought. My body still feels like a rag doll filled with rusty nails. If I feed her or use magic, I could undo whatever Lith has done and kill us both. I must find a way to protect Lith and Nock. Neither of them can survive being fed upon. Kala racked her brain in search of a solution while Nika hissed in frustration. Litha's skin was not only sturdier than leather, but it also healed so fast that a single droplet of blood had yet to be spilled. The vampire's patience had run out. Her mouth got close to the main artery, meeting a fierce resistance. A stone fist struck her in the jaw with the strength of a wild ox. Hands off the merchandise, sister, Solus warned her. She was now in her glove form, holding the gatekeeper sword against Nika's heart. Both were floating in mid-air thanks to spirit magic. Make one move and I'll kill you. She was using air magic to speak, just like the magical beast did. Between the hit and the enchanted metal pressing against her skin, Nika came to her senses. The killing intent Solus radiated had triggered her survival instinct, allowing her to snap out of her feeding frenzy. Nika raised her hands in submission, but Solus kept pushing her away with the blade until Nika's back was against the wall at a safe distance from Lith. I'm really sorry. The vampire sounded sincere, yet Solus kept infusing the gatekeeper with magic, ready to pulverize the enemy. It's just that I'm so hungry and that blood was spectacular. She never fed upon an awakened before. Kala explained. To a vampire, the more powerful a being is, the tastier is their blood. Please, Ring Fairy, spare my daughter. This is all my fault. I don't give a damn about why she did it. Solus's voice held no kindness, only rage. Until Lith wakes up, I'm not going to take any chance. Solus had yet to finish the phrase that she was forced to reconsider her options. A low rumbling was spreading through the ground, while the amount of mana in the room was skyrocketing. Both Solus and Kala were surprised. They had seen the phenomenon happen multiple times, but only from magical beasts. Litha's body was emitting a silver light, which became a small pillar piercing toward the sky. This is so wrong. Solus darted back on Litha's hand, checking his body with invigoration. The impurities in his body had reached once again his mana core, triggering the refinement process. This didn't happen to Tista, only when a magical beast turned into an evolved monster. I don't know who this Tista is, but if their core was below the cyan level, then it's normal. Reaching the blue core is a major event. Kala explained. It marks the moment when a common magical beast can become the first member of a new species. Yet you're also right, this is wrong. Usually, only magical beasts and plants receive Mogur's help. The other races are not attuned with the world energy, which makes their awakened undergo terrible suffering. It's because, unlike us, their bodies are incapable of evolving. What really worries me, though, is that I have never seen a silver light. This doesn't make any sense. In all the evolutions Solus and Kala had witnessed, the light had always been of a golden color. Chapter 374. This is really interesting, Ligain said while showing Milea the scene unfolding inside Scarlet's lab. The moment he had perceived the anomaly, he requested Tyrus to share her vision. What does this mean? Milea asked. He's just going from cyan to blue. It's no big deal. Why the light pillar? It didn't happen to me. That's because you are human while he is not. What baffles me is that silver light. You see, back when I refined my mana core from cyan to blue, evolving from a salamander into a drake, I produced a black pillar. Tyrus generated a white one and Solark a red one. The dragon's words left her in a stupor. Are you saying that? No, I'm not. Ligain cut her short. A different colored pillar means nothing until all tribulations have been overcome. What I'm saying is that a human never achieved guardianhood, and if I'm right, they never will. because whatever he is, he's not human. From their respective viewpoints, Salark and Tyrus watched an enormous pillar of silver light descending from the sky above Litha's position. Until that moment, they had always dismissed his existence as an oddity. Now their interest was piqued. If Lith knew what was about to happen, he would be grateful for being unconscious. Every major breakthrough was always more excruciating than the previous ones. Luckily, his body was refined along with his mana core, making it more resistant to pain. So, when his nails fell off like invisible pliers had pulled them out, he didn't wake up. Neither he did when his bones broke or his flesh was turned inside out. It had already happened in the past. Solus was more worried about Nika than about Litha's condition. I don't know what could happen if the vampire attacks him during the core refinement process. Maybe I should go back keeping watch, Solus thought, yet found herself unable to move, just like everyone else in the room. The magic lab that Scarlet the Scorpicore had borrowed Kala was several meters underground, shielded from external influences by some of her best arrays. Nonetheless, the gigantic silver light pillar descending from the skies passed through them like they were thin air. Solus had observed the evolution process of magical beasts several times, and it always made her think of a giant finger of some god that came down to breathe new life in the evolving creature. This time things went differently. When a light pillar from the sky met the one originating from Lith, his heart withered at a speed visible at the naked eye until it resembled a giant dried plume. The blood flow stopped. The resulting agony was so intense that Lith woke up clenching his chest. Solus could see impurities flow out of it like an invisible hand was squeezing them out. Then, when Lith was an inch from death, his heart absorbed the blood surrounding it and mixed it with the silver light, returning to its original size. Solus noticed with mana sense that the renewed heart pumped not only blood, but also mana. She also used Scanner to check Litha's life force for anomalies. The result was just as amazing. After his heart has been restored, Litha's life forces started to flow. It's no more static. Maybe that's the secret behind the ability to shapeshift, she thought. Then, the same thing happened to the lungs. Lith opened his mouth to scream. It was like countless scorching daggers had pierced his flesh, but no voice came out. One by one, all of his internal organs underwent the refining process. The flow of his mana and life force increased each time. When his brain shrunk to the size of an apple, Lith thought his life was over. He found himself wandering in a place where there was no light, no pain, nothing. Only the quiet stillness he had experienced in death. Everything was quiet, the time stood still. He had no idea how long it lasted. The only thing that gave him hope was the appearance of a small light representing his bond with Solus. If I can still feel her trying to reach me, then I'm not dead yet, he thought. When his brain recovered, Lith had no time to feel relieved or thank Solus. He knew the refinement wasn't over yet. All the impurities were now stored in his skin. This is going to hurt. Lith clenched his teeth. He didn't know what would follow, but he was sure it wouldn't be nice. He took off the skinwalker armor with a thought, to avoid it interfering with the process. The impurities flooded Litha's skin until it turned black. They hardened on contact with air, making him resemble an obsidian statue. Cracks appeared all over its surface. He felt like every inch of his body was being dipped into burning oil. Then the black skin crumbled and fell. His flesh and muscles remained exposed for a long, agonizing second before a new one grew to cover him again, before he could start screaming in pain. What the heck was that? Solus yelled while checking Litha's condition. He was unconscious again. His physique was apparently the same, but the reality was quite different. The density of his body was on a new level, making it almost impossible to harm him with conventional means. Solus could see him breathe mana and life force just like he normally did with air. Litha's mana core was now of a deep blue color. The amount of mana it stored hadn't changed much, but its quality had further improved. With every breath he took, he would absorb a little amount of world energy, even without the use of invigoration. His life force flowed freely through his every fiber, speeding up the recovery of his injuries. I have no clue, Kala replied. Magical beasts just evolve. Their body is like a cocoon they have to get freed from to reach the next stage. In Litha's case, it seemed more like torture, like someone was forcefully replacing defective parts. Can't you help him? Solus was the better healer among the two, but she drew her strength from Lith, and she didn't want to increase his burden. I never heard about this life force Lith kept talking about, and my children always shut me up. My body feels like it's held together with leaves and spit. I'm afraid that if I use magic, I may fall apart. Kala shook her head. My studies are more oriented towards necromancy rather than healing, but light and darkness magic are two sides of the same coin. I'm also a fast learner, so if you could explain to me what he did, I may be able to find a way to help us both. Solus explained to Kala the foundations of body sculpting and how to cast scanner with true magic. Fascinating, Kala replied after a few hours of lecturing. I have no idea what you have just said, but sure sound impressive. Maybe I have underestimated the importance of light magic in necromancy. Seems I will have to start over from scratch. If my hypothesis is right, I fail because I have no control over my life force. I need to learn light magic before trying again. Kala asked Solus several questions, to which she replied as well as she could. Solus was trying to describe to her how to manipulate the mana to achieve the scanner spell when Lith woke up. Chapter 375. How long was I out cold? He asked while clenching and releasing his fists several times. There was something off with his body. Almost 3 hours, Solus replied, which is odd. I expected you to need at least 8 hours to recuperate. How do you feel? Like there's an itch I cannot scratch. A needle in the back of my skull. Lith noticed Nock lying on the floor, still unconscious. He had so many things to ask, but so little time. First, he healed the young BYK, then proceeded to fix the mess Kala's body was. Wish I could speak and treat her at the same time. My day leave is almost over. I must make use of every single second. What the FCK? To Lith's surprise, he could not only perceive Kala's life force with much more clarity than before, but also understand where he or she had messed up. It was more about listening rather than seeing. Life force was like a song performed by a living being, and every defect was a sour note. Lith listened to the melody played by the white's body, guiding its flow along its intended path instead of trying to force it. The patchwork covering Kala's mana core soon became a smooth surface, even leaving a few energies to spare that Lith redirected to the butchered left paw to hasten its recovery. The procedure required over an hour, but neither Lith nor Kala noticed the passing of time. Lith was engrossed by his new ability and used it to heal his friend while deepening his understanding of body sculpting at the same time. Tier 5 healing magic hadn't become easier all of a sudden. Scanner was the same spell as before. Yet the blue core allowed him to obtain a whole new set of information that made it possible for him to understand the breath of life rather than discovering it with a trial-and-error process. Kala instead focused on herself, trying to put into practice what Solus had explained to her. Litha's touch made it easier for her to sense her life force. It was like a gentle massage over her soul that was easing her pain. When Lith was done, Kala felt exhausted but relieved. Somehow, she knew her life wasn't in danger anymore, and her paw, albeit was still limp, had stopped hurting. There, Lith said, everything should be all right. Take a few days to rest. No magic allowed. Your core has yet to settle in the new life force. If I were you, I'd wait until your paw works again. A few weeks should suffice. A few weeks, Kala grumbled. She had never taken such a long break from her research. A few hours at most. She wanted to object and bargain her way out, but after looking at her children's condition, she decided to comply. I understand you are in a rush. What do you need my help for? Lith sighed, hoping she would believe him, before explaining to her both his reincarnation problem and the need to get Solus a body. If Kala was surprised, she didn't show it. Nock and Nika were another story. Their mouths almost fell onto the ground hearing Litha's words. To them, lizards becoming dragons was something plausible. They were used as scarlet stories, where she slaughtered princesses and rescued kidnapped trolls. Reincarnation and a girl in a stone were too far-fetched to believe, though. Coming to me was the right move. Kala replied, after pondering for a while. I just don't get why you have submitted to the humans' army. I didn't submit. Lith scoffed. My problem can't be solved with a single spell or a generic artifact. If I had to find a solution all by myself, not even the extended life of an awakened one would be enough. I have only one attempt at achieving my goal. I must make it count. True, Kala admitted while tapping her chin with a single claw. Scarlet has amassed centuries' worth of knowledge. Yet even something common, like lichhood, is a huge gamble. Without her books, I wouldn't even know where to start. That's my problem. I have no starting point. That's why I had to make the humans think they need me more than I need them. Between the Mage Association and the army, I have now access to countless tomes, but it's still not enough. They don't trust me enough to let me read the books I need. I need to play my cards right and use my status to access otherwise forbidden areas. There were countless ruins in the Griffin Kingdom. Some were just piles of dust and debris. Others were places of power. Such areas were still protected by powerful barriers, and only the army mages knew how to disable them. Why waste years to open a door when you could just borrow a key? Lith showed Kala a map, pointing to her the regions he could choose for his assignment as a ranger. My plan is to pick one of the less populated areas with the greatest number of ruins. The others have already been thoroughly explored. Hoping to stumble into a secret relic that no one but me is able to find would be nothing but wishful thinking. Joining the army gives me access to the list of the ruins and to the methods to access them. The problem is that there are too many of them. Can you at least point me in the right direction? Kala limped to one of the libraries, pointing to Lith, a thick book with a deep green cover. I would pick it myself, but without spirit magic, I have only claws. Doctor's orders. She smirked. Lith took the book and started to flip through it. Can you really understand this gibberish? The tome was filled with odd runes he had never seen before. Of course not. Who has the time to learn a dead and buried language? Put some mana into it. Kala replied. Lith did as requested and observed the runes rearrange themselves in the common language the three great countries shared. This is amazing, Lith blurted out in envy. How did Scarlet manage to do this? She didn't. She, liberated most of these books from a mad lich, but this is a story for another time. Read from page 290. The chapter told the story of a forgotten race, the ODI. Millennia ago, their magical and scientific knowledge had allowed them to defeat all illnesses. Their empire grew in wisdom and power, until time was the only enemy they had left. The ODI became arrogant and attempted to find a way to achieve eternal life. According to the book, they started experimenting on the lesser races to develop a method to transplant the conscience from an old body to a young one. Thousands of lives were lost during the experiments, but in the end, they succeeded. It marked the beginning of their end. Until that moment, the ODI had believed that everyone would benefit from the research, that they would use the lesser races as a source of spare bodies. Their upper echelons had different plans. They considered such an idea revolting and aimed to preserve the purity of their bloodline. While commoners would receive a lesser body, the nobles started to buy children from the less fortunate among the ODI to use them as vessels. It didn't take long for a civil war to break out, nor for the so-called lesser races to exploit it to exterminate the ODI for good. The ODI laid the foundations to lichhood. Kala explained. Maybe in one of their ruins, you can find some clues to follow in their footsteps. Even if it doesn't work for you, it could always prove useful to your ring fairy to escape from her cage.